It likes you today.
Well, I have been especially nice to Alexa since we came back from the cruise. So my wife says it's just creepy, but
Yeah.
Alexa likes me. What can I say?
As long as the machines are cool with you.
Okay, it's sad you get along better with machines than most people, but she gets mad because every time I go, Alexa, would you please turn the kitchen light on? And she turns the light on. And I go, thank you. And Alexa says, you're welcome, or anytime. Now she just randomly asks me how my day's going.
Oh, it's got to be tricky.
I tried saying, Alexa, I love you, just to see what she would do. And that was rather disappointing because she said it's nice to be appreciated. Really, that's it? I'm like, oh, well.
Oh, I'm going to mess around with the dock a little bit. Add a few.
So how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Just a lot of work, so I've been busy, but
Sometimes that's a good thing.
chugging along. No, it is. We're getting a lot done, so there's a project we've been working on that's getting ready to finish out. It'll be cool because it's been tons of work. It's really sweet to see it in this like finished version.
Well, I was talking to James about the cross-country ruck march, and I really want to go. And my wife finally convinced me that it probably would not be the best thing in the world because I couldn't handle like a 6-hour tour on the cruise. Like, yeah, thinking about it.
Marches are just so brutal.
I'm going to like slow everybody down. Well, both of them down. I'm going to slow them down. I'm going to have issues that it's going to take time to deal with. So I said if it was a real mission, somebody would not make sure I didn't go. So I said, yeah, I think I'm going to, I might drive with them the first day and just to get pictures. But
yeah, that'll be, if you wanted to do anything like doing that, being like a backup Vic for them. I don't think James understands trucking across the country is
oh, I think he's going to find out. Well, yeah. I'm thinking when they did I've done the Police Unity tour on the bicycles.
Yeah.
I did it once all the way to DC. Now, I support staff in photographing it, and it was really great. But I was in bed for a week after I got home. I mean, I just literally could not get up and move. And the following year, I went the first day, but the other 3 days, I was like, yeah, I'm not going through that again. I came home. But I have big aspirations, but sometimes the body doesn't want to cooperate, and there's only so much you can do on sheer force of will.
That stuff's a lot of, it's a lot of energy and to do it.
Well, we're trying the new thing out for my knees because they won't operate on them now until maybe next year. If I don't have any more surprises coming along. I go in October and they inject dye into the paranoidal sac around each kneecap. And if it doesn't leak, the insurance company will pay for the procedure, where they refill the paranoidal sac with whatever you put in there. And then I have to wear custom knee braces and go to physical therapy 2-3 times a week to build a gap between my femur and my humerus, I think it is. And once that's done, they inject stem cells in there that supposedly, if everything works right, will turn into cartilage and make my knees like, well, I guess not like new, but a whole lot better without surgery.
That's ideal.
And I told my wife, I figured worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, I'm still on the list for the surgery. So
Yeah. As long as you're covered still.
I don't know. It just feels like I have too many procedures. It's starting to bother me.
So, I mean, if it helps out at that point, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I have a choice. You got to do it. But now the one this week, I don't think there's going to be any surprises other than they told me it's going to hurt like hell. They said, you should get somebody to drive you home and we'll give you a shot. I said, well, first of all, I don't do painkillers like that. So but I'll get somebody to drive me just in case.
No.
I'll bring a couple aspirin.
Self-medicating whiskey, you know.
I drank more on that 5-day cruise than I have drank in the past 5 years.
Means you're doing the cruise, right?
Yeah, and it's, I made friends with the people down in guest services, and every time I went down there, they were giving me free drink coupons.
Yeah. Way to do
Good to
it.
have the right friends.
Yeah, you get tight with the right. That's why it's like always make friends with cooks, mechanics, and you're like, HR.
I still got thrown out of
Way they can-
the lifeboat drill though.
You got thrown out of the what?
Well, after I fell in the Dominican Republic, my wife said you should just stay on the boat in Bimini because there's nothing in Bimini but beaches and swimming, and you don't like either of them. And she said we're just gonna go in the port and look at the gift shops. And so everybody gets off the ship, and they start announcing a lifeboat drill for the crew. Well, I just kind of grabbed my camera and went back in the crew area doing the lifeboat drill with them, taking pictures until somebody realized I wasn't a crewman. So I got some pictures, but I didn't get in the lifeboat, which is really what I wanted. I wanted pictures inside the lifeboat. Maybe next cruise.
Is it one of those like closed ones? Those newer ones they got?
Yeah. That's why I wanted pictures of it. And they got, I could not believe it. It looks like giant barrels that you can put one person in, and it slings them over. That's the one to get in. I would like volunteer to try that one out. How are you doing, Rose? Here's a dog decided to keep you.
I was muted and I couldn't get it unmuted. Yes, she decided to keep me, or however that goes. Right now, she's hiding. So you guys get to meet Maya.
Nice.
Hi, Maya.
My wife
is,
keeps telling me no more animals, but we'll see.
Yeah. You don't get to get under there, dog. Move. Come here. Come right here. Good girl.
Yeah, we go
So
through that
yeah,
every night.
she was a rescue from Ida. They basically abandoned her, left her, whatever. And she just kind of jumped in my car, and I was gonna try to foster her, but she had so much wrong with her when I took her to the vet that I ended up spending a lot more money than I thought I would. Because bleeding heart and whatnot, or at least that's what all my friends tell me. And now she's mine. So $800 later, I can't just let her go.
Yeah,
you probably got a
our
good bond
dog.
with her now too.
Yeah, there's that. Our dog is he's had some physical issues, and it's actually my son's dog, but he sleeps in our room every night. And yeah, if we ever had to evacuate, he's coming. The cat, 50-50.
That's so messed up.
It depends what he did that day. Listen, my wife climbs into bed and she goes, "What is in the bed?" She says, "There is something down there." And she pulls the sheet up, and the cat climbed under the covers and cacked all over her side. So we had to immediately change the sheets. She had to go take a shower and threw the cat out of the room.
Yeah, see, I'm not a cat person because I'm allergic.
That's why.
I think that if I was a cat person, I mean, if I wasn't allergic, I would be, because they are pretty and they are mean.
Yeah.
My spirit animal
Cedric's
at heart,
not
I
mean.
guess.
Yeah, Cedric is not mean. He's very intelligent, but he is strong-willed. He reminds me of my daughter. He just does not get
Yes.
no.
We're talking about your cat,
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
the cat
the
does not
person,
understand the word no.
not the person, Cedric.
Yep, the cat.
Go ahead, Maya.
I bought a toy robot at the Comic-Con the other day, and it walks and lights up.
Down.
Cedric
Go ahead.
is
She wants
terrified of it.
down. Come help her get down.
He climbed on the table, and I turned the robot on and start walking toward him. He's like going nuts trying to get away. And my wife threw him out of the room last night, and he was roaming free the rest of the house. And we get up this morning, and the robot's laying on its back. So he must have gone and knocked it over while it was off, and it couldn't defend itself. But that's funny. I think it's funny when he's on the floor and I'll put the robot down and turn it on. It'll walk, and he wants to go smack it, but he's afraid of it. So Mo, what's our topic tonight?
Oh man. Shit, I'm outside smoking right now. Let me answer that when I get back inside.
Okay.
After this cigarette. Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
Look.
All right. So the topic of the night is going to be for folks that either never deployed to a combat zone or deployed but never saw combat. How do they feel about their service and things like that? Especially compared to talking to folks who've been through some type of combat, and I guess to relate it to law enforcement, like folks who've been in for a while but have never had to like fire their weapon, or got shot at or some shit.
I mean, I guess I don't know what it is to go to combat, but you mean being actively shot at and not being shot at? Because I haven't had that.
That's
I've
that's
done
combat.
everything else.
Yeah, so
Getting
I've
shot
only
at,
had
that's totally combat.
I've
mean-
only ever had one round fired at me, and
I-
I didn't
mean,
like
I've
it.
been
But
I've been in many situations where I've had to chase people down with guns and could have been shot at, but wasn't.
So I guess, so to translate that, so like, man, you know, one of the things I was thinking about when I was thinking of this topic was, like I remember talking to a buddy of mine who I'd met when I was using the GI Bill at college, like after I'd gotten out of active. He was infantry, right? And I mean, when you join some type of combat arms in the military, you're typically joining to go fight, right? You're not really joining combat arms because you're like, I want benefits, you know, I want to pay for my college. Like, there's plenty of other jobs in the military you can do if that's your only goal, you know.
But
If
they
you're
don't.
joining combat arms, you're looking to get into some shit, you know. That's why you join combat arms. There's enough movies out there that kind of show that idolize that thing, so a lot of people are drawn to that aspect when they join a combat job, right? So this buddy of mine, he was infantry, and it's one thing. Like I've seen infantry dudes that they never got a chance to deploy while they were in, right? They did however many years they were in, and then never got the opportunity to deploy and actually like get tested that way. And they were like super butthurt about it. Some people were pretty chill and they're like, you know, it just wasn't in my cards, you know, but some people were like super fucking upset that they never got that experience. But this one guy that I'm talking about, he deployed to Afghanistan. I want to say must have been like 2015, 2016 time frame. He deployed to Afghanistan, right? So he's an infantryman. He's in a combat zone, in a combat environment, and never once got into a firefight. There was a couple of them, actually. They were both these dudes were from the same unit, on the same deployment. Like, never got into a firefight. One of them was pretty chill about it, and he had a good perspective. The other one was like, you could totally tell, like, he was really butthurt that he
like he missed
finally
something.
got out there. Right, he missed something, you know. And because a lot of us in the veteran lounge there would talk about our combat experiences and shit. He's like, you know, he went to the spot to be and never had anything happen to him, you know. Never got to get tested, I guess. So that's the topic. I mean, like, we'll really deep dive into it when we go through the little rules and whatever the fuck, but like, yeah, I think it's a interesting topic to jump into.
It is, because my perspective on it has changed a lot since I've been hanging out with you guys.
So, I mean, help me understand. People go into the military and get mad that they don't get shot at.
Yes. And again, so to break this down, like, think about it. Like, there's a lot of different jobs in the military, right? A lot of folks don't join the military to go to war, right? That's not their expectation. A lot of folks will join. Like, there's a lot of other jobs in the military that have no direct ties to a combat role, right? Most jobs in the military are not combat related directly, right? They're more there to support the combat effort, but they're not directly. Like, you've got HR people, you've got people that do pay, you've got people that do supply, you've got mechanics, you know, you've got all these other roles that are there in some way, shape, or form just to support the effort, but they're not supposed to really be tied to combat, you know. Of course, like, they can end up in a combat situation, but that's not their role. When you have somebody who joins the military, specifically joining in like a combat role, like, let's say infantry or some type of special operation, or your Cav Scouts or combat engineers and shit like that, they're joining that role knowing that that role is probably going to see combat if they go to a combat zone, right? That's all the recruiter videos and commercials and the movies and things like that. They idolize that as like a fucking combat heavy role, you know? So when you got folks joining that job, they're not joining to be like, I'm going to join the infantry and pray that I never deploy, because you just don't do that. That's retarded. Like, why the fuck would you join that job hoping to never deploy? You know, like, it just doesn't make sense. You join that job because you're either really patriotic and you want to serve and protect and you want to fight for those things, but at the end of the day, you want to fight for those things you believe in. Or you join because you're just like, I don't have shit else to do and I'm bored as fuck and I need an adventure. So you're like, combat sounds like a fucking adventure, you know. Or you join because all you want to do is just shoot shit and you play too many video games, you know.
Well, they didn't have video games.
The media skews it. The media really skews how actual combat folks think, right? The media always makes it, or movies always make it seem to be like, oh man, I hope I never have to this and that and blah blah blah. But it's like, no, bitch, like, you join that shit because you want to go fucking fight it. Like, that's why you join. Like, at some capacity, like, sure, you might be thinking about benefits. You might be thinking about, this could get me out of the situation I'm in. This could help me move up and give me, like, advantages and shit like that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to that specific job, going to that job to go fight, or at least expecting that that is a reality you're going to face, you know.
Well, I wanted to be a combat photographer. That was my goal. And 3 days, I lost my opportunity because of 3 days. And I had a choice. I could stay on active duty, but I couldn't be a photographer anymore because they didn't need them, or I could go back to my guard unit. So I went back to my guard unit, because if you're not going to send me into combat to take pictures, I don't want to, you know, I don't get stuck driving a truck or cooking or, you know, whatever other stupid thing they needed done.
You're like, what's the point?
Yeah, well, you know, 17-year-old, great plan, great life plan. I'm going to join the guard unit where I'm interning as a photographer. I'm going to go stay on active duty, go to Vietnam, get some great pictures, and then work for Life magazine. Vietnam was over before I ever made it, and Life magazine went out of business. And I had no plan B.
But you were in the military, so that was your plan B.
Yeah. My plan was one tour and get combat photos. Now, I did end up doing almost 2 years on active duty for training. And I did stay a total of 10 years between that and my guard time, because I did like it. And I thought I might have had a chance to go to Afghanistan, because after I was out, they called me and told me they were putting a deployment together for Afghanistan. And I realized that the person that called me was the guy that recruited me. And my wife said, "You're too old." Like, I was in my 30s. I wasn't too old. But I thought about who called me, and I remembered his reputation. And I called up the recruiter and I said, if I come back and get deployed, which is what you're telling me is going to happen if I come back, where am I going? And he started hemming and hawing. And I said, I'm going to make it easy for you. Am I going to get to do combat photography, or are you going to bury me someplace? And he said, well, you're going to be in Norfolk, Virginia, and you could process film that's coming back. I'm like, really? Because you ever hear Photomat? And I didn't go back in because of that. And now I'm sorry I didn't go back in, because even a deployment to Norfolk, Virginia would have got me vet benefits at this point. And I realized that, you know, having a attitude about I want to see combat or I'm not going was probably stupid. Not the stupidest thing I've ever done, but it was up there.
I'm actually curious, Rose, about your perspective because I imagine it's a little different, right? You don't typically, I mean, combat like a combat job in the military is pretty cut and dry, like what you could expect, especially during wartime, right? If you're signing up during wartime, we've been at war. We were at war for like what, 20 fucking years, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like the people that were joining expecting that if they're joining a combat job, they were expecting a good chance that they were going to go deploy, you know. And
So I did actually enlist. And the day I was supposed to get on the plane, it didn't work out. My temper got the best of me. And so I was 3 pounds heavy, 12% body fat, enlisted into the Marines, needed a waiver to be a fat girl, apparently, because they didn't do body fat taping where I would have easily made it in. Another one of my classmates also needed a waiver that day. We spent the entire day together just bullshitting about, haven't seen each other since graduation, whatnot. I was supposed to be going IT. He was going grunt. I don't know, infantry. I don't know I don't remember what it was called. At the end of the day, he got today's waiver. I got tomorrow's waiver. And when we were leaving, he asked me, he was like, Rose, what do you need a waiver for? You've been planning for this for 4 years. What's the hiccup? I said, I'm heavy. And they don't do body fat. Because when I said I was heavy, he laughed. I said, what about you? He said, I went out last night and failed my drug screen this morning for cocaine. And it
Yeah, it's not funny.
threw
It's not
me.
funny.
It threw me into a fit, I guess, because I couldn't understand how a guy who failed his drug screen for coke got the waiver over me, who had applied and been accepted for a technical job, had been doing this shit for 4 years. I worked the X Games the year before, passed all the PT. I've been PTing with my recruiting station for 4 years. There was no way in my mind that it made sense. And I went into my recruiter's office and basically cleared his desk off onto the floor and told him he could shove the Marine Corps right up his asshole and never looked back. That being said, that's the only regret that I have in life is that I allowed them to get into my head so much that I didn't follow through with what was one of my goals for myself, because my entire life goal was to go into the military, be the military police, come out after, my 20 years and go be a state trooper. That was my goal. That was my whole life plan. So instead, I went and worked construction for 18 years, and now I'm just the police. But how this applies to our topic, I guess, police don't see the combat part like you guys do. I don't know if I went in and I guess back up to what you were saying earlier, and I guess that's why I asked the question. I didn't have any intention to go in and I don't think it ever even clicked in my head that I may possibly be shot at or was going to go to war. Like I said, I applied for and got the IT part of it. So I never thought of that. And you're talking 26 years ago. I don't know that they would have put me in that situation back then. But police side of it, what we think of, I guess, I don't know if y'all judge each other off of that, but we are very judgmental. If all you've ever done is ride a desk and you've never been patrol, we are snobs to you because you don't know what we do. You've never done what we do. You don't get it. You don't understand it. You've never done it. Don't talk to me about how you've done this or that and this and that. And if you've never been patrol, you've never been patrol. Like, you don't understand the everyday bullshit that we go through. So how can you talk to me about it? How could you be my rank if you've never done it? And that's where we get a lot of bullshit, is because they promote people that have always been in the office, and then they come out and they try to run a platoon, or they try to tell us how to do things. And we do it and we respect them and we respect who they are. Don't get me wrong, but it's never, ever, it never fits like a glove. Let me just say it like that.
So I'm glad you bring that up, because that's the topic that I brought up. There's really two sides to that coin, right? There's a side that if you've never experienced that, and you were looking for it, you know, how it impacts you. There's also the side that if you did experience that and you're dealing with folks that haven't, like, how do you approach those people? Because it goes both ways. Like, some people that were really looking for that experience that never got it will really idolize folks that did. A lot of folks that go through combat and they come back, I think one of the hard parts for those people specifically to readjust is that we come back with that mindset of, you have never been to fucking war, like, or you sat on a big base, like, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Like, don't even attempt to come at me. So now we're
Right.
and you got to think, like, war specifically, like, that's a small community of Americans that go and experience that. So now we're coming back to an entire country that like, for the most part doesn't have that experience, and we're carrying that same mindset over a lot of the times, where we're, in a sense, we're really the masters of our own isolation. You know, like, we're isolating the shit out of ourselves by adopting that mindset, coming in and being like, nope, none of you fucking understand. I can't talk to any of you. I'm not even going to talk to my fucking family and my friends that were back home and shit like that. You know, so it's, I think there's a justification for some of it, but it also helps, like, make sure, you know.
I think that part of where that mindset probably plays over to us is police and non-police or non-military. So, you know, I don't want to say it because I know we're live. So there's a way.
That's what chat is for.
You won't
So you
get
can
me.
type a message.
But this
Last time
helps
y'all
you. This
got
helps you
me,
think of
won't
it
get me
tactfully.
this time.
Yeah, think of it tactfully.
Right. So there's a way that we interact with people. And it's funny that you bring up family, because recently I had a discussion that triggered me with my family. They asked, why do we do things a certain way as police, and why aren't we more passive? And I, immediately went defensive, and in the end I was like angry tears coming out of my face, because I couldn't even understand, and this is my family, how they could come at me that you don't understand it. You've never done it. You don't understand the fact that these people intentionally sometimes try to take our lives. And it is simply because of what we're wearing. It's not military. We're not at war with these people. There's no political reasoning for it. It's because I woke up today and I put that uniform on, and that made me a target. That was it. And when we meet or when we have to deal with people like that, I find that we pretty much just shut off. Like, I don't want to deal with you. Like you said, I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have nothing to do with you. I don't even want you in my presence. Like, you have no idea. So how can you talk to me about this? How could you even understand any of the emotions, the mindset, any of it? And then you have to, later that night, I had to think about it. They don't know. They have no idea. They have never experienced it. So how would they know that asking questions because they're curious would cause a reaction? And it is simply that they're trying to understand you. They don't mean any harm. They know that you're different. One, from before, whatever what you went through happened. And two, they either respect what you're doing or they want to understand it just because they want to see a different side of it. Imagine there are people out there that try to ask questions because they have bad intentions, but I haven't met any. When you really think
There's
back,
always going to be that.
not something, but I'm pretty isolated. I mean, I don't, and I had to think about that too. I didn't realize how isolated I am until recently, and I am pretty isolated from everybody. I go to work,
I mean,
I come home, and that's what I do. I don't really socialize. I don't really go do things. Tonight I went out to eat, and the whole time we're out to eat, I was nervous, for no reason.
Well, what?
well, it's hard to shut it off, you know. So, and you bring up a lot of really good points. Is that when somebody, and that's where part of the natural, I think, animosity comes in, where it's like you had mentioned, like, you know, office jockeys versus like a patrol. Like, have you been out there? Because when you have folks that are trying to tell you how to do your job, when you understand the realities of it in a very different way because you've been on the ground, that's where I still have a problem with that. Like when somebody tries to fucking tell me about shit that, you know, anything combat related, and I'm like, bitch, like, do you even understand like how the insane complexities behind that? With all those complexities, you literally have like a split second to react, you know?
Right.
And that's it. And if you react the wrong way in that split fucking second,
Someone
it's not
dies.
only that you might die, it's
Or
that somebody that is relying on you might die. And that's the biggest thing, is that's such a hard concept for folks to understand. So when they're coming into it trying to tell you what to do, I still have problems with that. Now, if somebody, like you were saying, where they're generally, like, they're asking questions because they're genuinely curious, you know, that's still, like, we'll still take it the same way because we're used to people coming at us like that, you know. But I think it is important to recognize that, like, you know, most people just, because they don't understand, that's not a bad thing, you know. But finding a way, having the patience to actually explain it, if you have the patience to do it, that's worthwhile, because that might connect some dots that they never even could comprehend on their own. Because again, they haven't had that experience, you know.
Yeah.
So it could help bridge some of that gap.
I
Go ahead.
did explain, because it was my autistic nephew who was with his mom, and there, yeah, I had been drinking. I had 2 cards high, so I wasn't drunk or anything, but I was a little relaxed, I guess. So the control that I normally function in wasn't there. And when his question was simple, why don't you, when you are met with someone who's trying to hurt you or trying to hurt somebody else, why don't you shoot them in the hand or in the leg? Why, why can't you just, and
I'm
honestly,
sorry.
I know, right?
No, because people watch Hollywood too
People
fucking
think
much.
that.
They think,
Right.
oh, you're a trained professional in handling a firearm. You should be an accurate fucking shot.
Right. Again, he's autistic. He's Asperger's, so he's not, disabled autistic, but he is
In a
highly
way.
genius level. He can take any machine you put in front of him apart and put it back together and probably make it work better than the people that built it the first time. He builds computer programs and has had no formal training. So in his mind, he's just trying to understand my job because it makes no sense to him. And his other brother wants to be a police officer. So I think in his mind, he's trying to understand what his brother wants to do, what his nanny does, so that it makes sense in his mind somehow. But it absolutely triggered me because when I answered him, because that's not safe, they still have another hand or they can still walk, or, that's just not what we're trained to do. None of those answers seemed to satisfy him enough. And then his mom chimed in and she was like, well, if he's injured at that point, can't y'all just jump on him and grab him? I'm like,
You gotta,
And
you know, you gotta
that's-
bust out
You
a
just-
have a
you just
Nerf
wanna
gun
tell
on
'em-
hand.
You try it.
I
Uh-huh.
love when people.
Yeah,
I love
have a
when
Nerf
people
gun
are-
on hand and be like, shoot me on this hand right now while I'm running at you
I
in like a
love
split
when people
second from
who
7
have
feet away.
never
be
had
accurate, right? And
an
be accurate.
experience like that. They
And
think,
shoot
Yeah,
oh,
like
and
make
while
that shot
shooting
while the
at you-
person is moving right at you with like
it's-
no distance between y'all.
with
Yeah.
a gun, right?
and it,
Yeah, make
Or
With
that
a
shot.
gun, and you shoot my
Then-
gun out of my hand before I can shoot you. Yeah. So, but no, I didn't tell him all of that. And instead, in the end, I ended up crying because, not crying, but, angry tears because I was unable to express my frustration. And I had to be controlled and I have to be calm and I have to be able to try to verbalize the explanations and articulate it so that they can understand it. And for whatever reason, it frustrated the shit out of me. And it had me so agitated that all I wanted to do was drive back home. That like I just wanted, and I was in Houston, so it was my first weekend off since the hurricane came through. It was my second night off. I was only there for 2 nights, 3 days, and I still wasn't relaxed, I guess, or even decompressed for that matter from all of it. I had just worked 22 days straight. I'd only had electricity for maybe 4 days, maybe. So it was all still just raw, I guess. And to have my job questioned that way by the people that I value the most bothered the shit out of me. And that's something that we're taught. We are taught in the academy that our peace cannot be disturbed. We have to be able to stay in control of ourselves no matter what. No matter the environment, no matter the pressure, no matter the intensity of the conversations around us, no matter the situation, you have to be in control. You can never appear to be out of control. No matter what's going on inside, outside has to be calm. And that tested it, but I don't know. That's why I guess I didn't understand when y'all said people get upset that they don't see fire, because even the police that sit the desk and then come out as rank, they've never wished to be patrol. They've never wanted to be patrol. They've never wanted that experience. They didn't want to have to fight people. They didn't want to have to go in houses and search buildings where people have broken in and are armed. They just, it's not something they wanted to do. So it did make sense to me when you said that.
But if you're going to lead
Sure.
people that are going to do that, you have to do it with them.
The police don't feel that way.
Listen, I caught a lot of flack because in my
Just-
unit, I did everything my men did. I mean, literally everything. Whenever we did a weapon search, I was the first guy through the door. every single time. And I would, like you're the lieutenant. You're supposed to be in the office running things. You're not supposed to be out there. Yeah, my men are out there. I'm out there, and I don't want to hear anything
And the last
about it.
big one the lieutenant that I told you about, he was like that, and we loved him for it, and I do love him for it. Like, even now that I'm not there anymore, he is the only one that has followed up and checked on me since I left. So people like you make a huge difference in our departments. So don't ever, whatever trouble you got into, then go blow somebody. I don't know.
That's the
They
way.
can't,
That's the way it's
because
supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to be.
You
gotta
have to be
skin
there
in
for
the
your
game.
man.
Yeah.
If you don't have any skin in the game, you're not going to worry about your guys. All right,
Well,
they'll
they're
take care of
also
it.
your folks aren't gonna respect what you're saying as much too. Especially if you're telling your folks to do things, whether it's soldiers or service members or like officers, if you're telling them to do things that they're gonna perceive as like that's a lot of risk for little reward, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. We're gonna perceive it on the ground as you don't know what you're talking about because you're not out here with us and you're telling us to do something that's high risk. So our heart's not gonna be in it. When you have a leader that has skin in the game and they're there with the folks on the ground and they're setting that example, the people on the ground are gonna respect it and want to push themselves more. Typically, you're always gonna have shit bags, of course. They're just gonna be shit bags, but that kind of leadership goes a long way, I think. But it is, I guess there's a few folks that just jumped in. So if you haven't heard the topic of the night, it's really about if you weren't in a combat environment, or you were and you never experienced combat, and from the law enforcement lens, if you were, I guess, patrol officer, is that the way to put it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you weren't on the ground doing shit, and you never had anything happen to you, right? How do you perceive your service? How do you perceive folks that have been through some shit? How do you look at them? And then on the other side of that coin is folks that have been through some type of combat or firefight or rough, like hand-to-hand engagement. Because I feel like law enforcement might have to deal with more like brawling on the ground than shooting shit. How do you look at people who haven't been through that?
I mean, I've been law enforcement for 6 years, and I've pulled my gun more than I've never had to shoot at anybody yet. Thank God. I hope I did, 23 more like that. But the likelihood of it happening is not on my side. But I'm hoping. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, you have the added problem, which shouldn't really be a problem, but you're female. And people perceive females
There it is.
in law enforcement and the military as different. One of the best men in my unit was a girl. And her nickname going through the police academy was Waterworks, because the lead instructor made it his goal in life that he was going to make her quit. And the guys that were in the academy with her said not every day, but almost every day, she was in tears in the back of the squad car screaming that he was not going to make her quit. And she was one of the best officers I had, because that guy tried to break her and couldn't do it.
I mean, I can feel that story. I absolutely can feel that story. And it comes with determination. You almost become as determined as they do. That, pardon my French, but then GFY for all you care.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Bruno,
No.
quick question.
Yeah.
What did you guys do with that instructor? Did you
I
guys
didn't even
proceed?
hear about that until she got in my unit. But from what I gathered, that was his last class. Kind of like my PT instructor. When I went through, we were his last class.
And that's always a curious part for me when you hear about shit like this. And I've known a bunch of officers who, like, military, civilian, who have expressed the same kind of thing. And that's always the one question I ask them. What did you guys do about that instructor? Or what did you guys do about that person in a leadership role?
Yeah, see, but he's not even associated with my department.
Doesn't
He
matter.
works for the Police Training Commission. We have no interaction with him whatsoever,
I understand that, but it's
other than
always-
making a complaint.
I see Austin. I see you going in on like, did you tie that motherfucker up and like
No,
play
no,
the shit
no,
out of him?
it's not like that. You know,
I was thinking the same thing.
I've had several instances where
You know,
I've
treat him like a good butter bar should be treated.
I've gone out of my way for soldiers in the past, and you know, when I've dealt with that, when I went through PLDC, we had a bunch of shit fuck instructors, or BNOC, or fucking going back through AIT, and you have, or just being in a unit, and you having that one piece of shit who's never done a goddamn thing, but he's all doing that bullshit. And I'm not going to say I've been the best person about going after it, but more often than not, it's been, I've tried to go out of my way to make sure that they either lose that position or lose their stripes. Because that's that toxic leadership that we've all experienced. And it ain't policy.
What did you do to your new PLs, Austin? I'm really curious about your like fucking up PL stories.
PL? Oh God.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you know, like brand new, like doe-eyed butter bar, like back in Ranger School, you know, like fucking.
We tied one to a fucking cot in Iraq and stood him on top of the
There it
commander's fucking MRAP. Like we taped it
There
down
it
to
is.
the,
There's the good
taped
stuff.
it down to the gun
That's
mount.
it.
Wasn't MRAP.
Mine resistant.
It's a like one of those armored
Barrier.
trucks.
Hey,
Oh,
one person
shit.
talking, quit interrupting.
It's one of those fancy newfangled things for the army.
Because a Humvee's
Yeah.
a pile of
They're
shit.
great. They're great.
I'm
Hey,
not sure.
They
Humvee with
realize
sandbags was
Humvees
great.
just like get ripped apart.
I'm not sure who did it,
Hey,
but we did
Humvee
have
with
a
sandbags
sergeant.
worked perfectly fine.
We did
Wow.
have a sergeant in my department, and we're in Atlantic City is part of Atlantic County, and they got a call that he was buried in up to his neck in the sand in Atlantic City, and the tide was coming in. And when they got out there, he was buried in sand up to his neck with his gun sitting on his head so it wouldn't get wet. So I'm thinking he really pissed somebody off.
Yeah.
Okay, so who else heard dumbass pop in their head?
Oh yeah. You must have done something fucking stupid.
We were a very political department. Now, I don't know if it's still like that because I've been out for, I don't know, 15 years now. But we had guys that got promoted without ever taking a civil service test because they knew the right people. I was a lieutenant and I had a captain assigned to me in my unit that I'm in charge of. And I had to get him kicked out because he was going to get somebody killed. How do you assign a captain to a lieutenant?
I had
And
a
the
first
lieutenant's in
sergeant,
charge.
so.
Like,
But it was for the whole point of kicking him out. Good old Cordero. Boy,
That happens. That happens a lot, though. I mean, you think about it. Like how many stories? Like, shit. I had a dude that was like a position and a rank above me. That I was. It was a little more. It was not so overt. But I was still a specialist at the time, as a team leader, inserted into that position so I could control like the squad when we would get into firefights and shit, because this dude was just, you know, he wouldn't do his fucking job.
Yeah.
So that was the solution, was to just like swoop, like put me in there, and then I would run the show. But that happens so fucking much. Like, how many stories you hear of that shit? Like, you know.
Hey, how many times have you seen that toxic leadership that's all about their OER and not a goddamn bit about the soldiers?
All the time. You know what the problem is? Everyone's like a yes person a lot of the times. Like once you start getting up rank and getting up into those positions,
your balls
yes,
drop out.
You know, yes.
The minute you become DA select,
I will do this. Oh, dude, it's horrible. Like the moment you're in a position of power and the person above you who's in a higher position of power is like, hey, let's make everyone do this. Instead of people being like, hey, that's fucking retarded, and that's going to cause a lot of problems on so many levels. Everyone's just like, oh, you know, just like fucking, yeah, we got this. Like, we're going to fucking make it happen. I'm going to crush everyone's nuts who doesn't fucking do this shit. And I'm like, dude, that's
Remember
the
how we're
100% wrong answer. Like, that's how you make people hate what they're fucking doing and not give a shit about what you're doing. You know?
Remember how we were talking
That's when
Friday
morale goes
about
into the
corporal
toilet.
rank?
Yeah, it's like,
Remember how we were talking about the corporal rank?
yes, yeah.
I remember when that was actually, a requirement for going to fucking, as soon as you became promotable, you were pinned on corporal stripes, and because it was going to be, 3-4 months before you got into PLDC, but that was the tryout, because that's when you're going to see that motherfucker try and flex what little bullshit mosquito wing rank he's got. I'm a corporal. You specialists will worship the ground I walk on. No, you're going to go suck a fucking dick, dude.
Now I can say it. I couldn't say it before, but now that you said it, I can say it.
and welcome to
Listen to your heart. Say what your heart wants.
welcome to the infantry while
Mo.
in garrison.
Hey, oh, did you
Hey,
leave?
so we got, before we digress too much,
Dang it.
we got a few new
there he is.
faces I don't think I've seen on here. So,
I'll be back.
Hey.
I gotta take my
Steven,
wife.
Hey, yeah.
are you? Oh, all right, Austin. Yeah,
Peace out, Austin.
how you are, man? Like, what's
See you later.
your background? What you in here for? You got thoughts on what we've been talking about and scheming on?
What am I in for?
In here. What are you in here for?
Just to be a creeper. No.
Welcome to the military.
We're all creepers.
I've recently been introduced to James Corbett, and I've just taken a lot of interest into Project Refit, and I want to try and do as much as I can to help others. And I spent 18 years with the Army. About 8 years of that was active duty. I was 4 years of active duty, then went into the National Guard, and then after 9/11, I went back into active duty. And to come into your the topic of for tonight, after 9/11, I didn't see any kind of combat. I was a tanker, but I had all stateside missions, but I was active duty for 6 years after that, after 9/11. I figured I'd just come in and say hi and see how this works. And I think everybody froze.
No,
Good on
I
my
think
end.
it's just you.
Was I that boring?
Yeah,
Does
we
it-
can hear you just fine.
Yeah, it's operator error. Don't worry, it's operator error.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry
gonna get
about
the
that.
timing
I don't
gauge.
know.
So
I don't know.
So being on topic, as somebody who never saw fire, I guess, how do you feel about the people who went to combat and how they come back?
My heart goes out. I saw friends go over there and come back completely different people. I've actually lost more friends since they came back through PTSD. and drug addiction and alcoholism and suicide than any of them in actual combat. I don't think I lost one friend in actual combat, but I've lost about 20 friends due to PTSD. So, that really hurts, because there was, it's like, I've had friends say things to me that I don't completely understand, but I want to be there for them, But it's like, how can I be in the Army for 18 years and not completely understand my brother? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it
Law
does.
is no different. I thank you for what you've done. I've never been military, but I mean, we're on that end of it. We as police are brothers and sisters through and blue, and it is what it is. If they've never been patrol, if they've been SWAT, if they're special victims, if they seen the worst of the worst and done the worst of the worst, when they call, we answer. And a lot of the times they, on our end, I don't know about you guys, and there's been some that call me, and there's been one that I've just gone and sat with, like in the room, just sat, watched movies, never talked, never said anything other than, hey, I'm here. Where you want me to sit? Sat, and I spent probably 14 hours with them that day. And that was what they needed. That was it.
Right.
So, I mean, I've lost people, but I don't know any police officers. I didn't know any that have committed suicide. Yeah, some to alcoholism, some to drugs, but they've left the force because of it. So we lost contact with them because they leave, and they leave, and I'm kind of stuck. But it's a weird dynamic. I half as much as I understand my own. Because you guys have like a network of being able to keep up with each other no matter where y'all go. We don't have that.
I make two comments. One, I'd say it's getting easier. We're making those waves, and it's groups. It's places like this that are making that happen, that are making that available to touch base with each other. That's first thing. Second thing is that I did it was when I was first getting ready to get out of the military. I did a ride along with my buddy. He's like my brother. He's a Baltimore police officer, and I did that ride along with him. And this was shortly after my deployment. This is probably maybe a year and a half after my deployment. And that opened my eyes. Like I'd known that he, I didn't know if he was going to make it out of Baltimore during 2015. But I did that ride along with him, and there were places in Baltimore that I was like, oh my gosh, if this was dirt on these streets, the mentality, the way they acted, it was crazy. There was some similarities there. I mean, not quite like Afghanistan, but there was some similarities. The people, they're just different, right? And he lived, during that time that he is on duty, he lives in that constant vigilance. Constant. And that's where I got a lot of respect, because Bo and I both have talked about this, several of us have, and that is you guys go home, you put your uniform up, turn it off, and then you wake up the next day and you do it all over again. Mm-hmm. And that's your life. We go for 9 months, maybe see a lot more, but it's just like this period that's set. So I want y'all, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I want y'all to give yourselves a lot of credit, regardless of whether you've been in a firefight or you haven't been in a firefight. because there's a dynamic that you guys have to constantly be vigilant in your job. And I highly respect, as an Army guy, I highly respect that.
And I
So-
appreciate it, but we don't see it, I don't think, the way you do. Because it is an everyday thing and we do it every day regardless. We don't I don't know the right word for this, but we don't recognize it the way you do. And I think I think yesterday I had my first, oh shit, what the fuck are you doing? That's not how you do that moment. Because I come from a department that handled 40 to 45,000 calls of service a month to a department that handles 40 to 45,000 calls of service every 2 years. So the officer safety, or the level of officer safety that we had where I come from to what they have here is not the same. And it's taken me a minute to adjust, but yesterday was the fuck did you just do moment. That wasn't okay in anybody's situation. Because in my eyes and what I was taught, our traffic stops are our worst. Yeah, we fight people. Yes, we get into gunfights. Yes, we search buildings with armed subjects, and yes, we do domestics and we investigate murders. And I've caught a man who tried to jump off the building. And I mean, yeah, we've done a lot. We do a lot, but traffic stops is probably the most dangerous thing that a police officer can handle, because you are walking up to somebody's home on wheels and you don't know, one, who they are, two, what they've done or what they're going to do before you've gotten to them, and three, you don't know their mindset or if they're armed. And every department handles them differently. But from department to department to department, the thing that I've seen always in all of the ones that I've worked with, which have been many, is officer safety. We all have the same shit. Like, you don't ever go past the pillar. You never put your head or arm in their car. If you can get them to come to you, that's always better. You never have more than one occupant out at a time. There's certain things that are basic knowledge that we do. And when you don't do that, it is the fuck did you just do moment, right? So when you say that we do this every day, yeah, we don't see it the way you do, because it is an everyday thing and we do get complacent. And I think we take a lot of things for granted. But when shit happens like that, it becomes like being here since March has made me lazy in a lot of ways, that now that I see it because of yesterday, I'm not comfortable with it. But the things that I'm not comfortable with, I don't know how to apply to my new position. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Totally understand.
Because I'm in a different environment. So to
Yeah.
enable myself to keep that edge or to keep that training up, it will make me look out of place a lot.
Well, here's a tie-in. It's something that I noticed. So when I guess let me give a little background context. When I was active duty, I was infantry, right? So all my deployments were as infantry, and all my experience was infantry first. Then I went into the reserves, and I went military intel, and it was the reserves, so it was already a different beast, and two, it was not a combat job, right? It was like intel, like that, like intel soldiers can end up in combat situations, but that's typically not you unless maybe like you're doing what Moore does. Like if you're run of the mill intel, you're not typically like going to be doing that. And so there's a lot of folks there that don't have those experiences. They don't have that background. They have a different mindset because they're used to doing the stuff they're doing in the environment that they're in, which isn't as intense as the environment that I came from, you know. And I think a good approach to that is you have a lot of lessons learned that you can carry forward, right? And so when folks come with these different backgrounds and with these different experiences, like you do have an opportunity to, and I would imagine it'd probably be a little harder for y'all because there's like your day to day is like with, you know, either you soloing or with like a partner. But some of the things you do, some of the practice that you learn that were good practices for that just in case oh shit scenario, those are things that you can start explaining, right? It's not just saying like, hey, just do this, but that explanation of why, those examples of what happened in situations and why it was successful in certain situations and situations where it wasn't applied, how it fucked things up, right? Detrimentally. That's a good takeaway. And maybe that's part of the lessons learned because it goes on both ends. I'm sure there's shit that they do that'll ease you up a little bit, but there's a lot of shit that you know that could benefit them for sure. And maybe that ties into the topic a little bit. Folks that like, if you've like, oh man, I'm outside smoking, so I can't see your name right now, but I think Steven, you were saying you did 6 years. I mean, you were a tanker too. Yeah. So you were combat arms. Like that was your job was, you were probably expecting, especially after 9/11, to go fucking deploy. And then that didn't happen. And with that experience, right, what were the lessons learned you can take away talking to your buddies, right? And your buddies are still going to see you like you served, you walked the line. I think at the end of the day, for folks that have seen combat or been in some shit or been on the line, it doesn't matter that you might have seen it or not. I think it's more important that you were on the ground, right? You were going through that stuff. You were ready to roll, and you have a similar mindset that bridges some of that gap, right? There's something we can relate to and connect on.
I was always ready to roll. I'm still ready to roll right now, but they medically retired me with a bad heart. If it wasn't for that, I'd still be doing it. I'd still be in, because being a soldier was kind of the thing that I did best in life. Being a civilian is doesn't fit well with me, and I kind of figured after 13 years of being, you know, medically retired that it would start setting well, but it still doesn't sit well with me at all. It's like most civilians and civilian jobs and civilian bosses are just jackasses. They haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. I don't know. But by the time 9/11 happened, the Army had already made me a truck driver. It took me, they said, we don't need you as a tanker anymore. We need you as a truck driver. So, but I love driving trucks. That's probably like even after 9/11, it didn't matter what you were getting trained to go kick doors in. So yeah, that's.
So how did that? Let me ask you this: how did you take that? Like being with that mentality of being ready to roll, right? How did you take that? Not being able to roll out and then getting medically retired.
Well, I was actually kind of like pulled out at the last minute. We were getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and that's when they discovered that I had atrial fibrillation. So everybody that I was in with I was fairly new in that unit because I was on on a stateside mission, and while I was on the stateside mission, my unit disbanded. And when I got back to my armory, it was a completely different group of people in there, to the point where they were trying to give me tours of the armory, and I'm like, "Yo, this is my armory. You don't know where," you know. But I was, yeah, I was left behind, and the rest of the unit went, and that kind of kicked my ass. And I fought the whole medical retirement as much as I could, but it didn't. You know, hindsight's 2020. They did the right thing, because the condition that I have is not something to be messed with, because I've been fixed so many times, it's not even funny. Because this condition just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back, no matter what we do. Probably looking at a pacemaker next time my heart goes out of rhythm. I'm probably going to end up with a pacemaker. So, yeah, the Army did do the right thing by medically retiring me. They gave me, I had 18 years in, they gave me my 20, but I can't collect until I turn 60, which is another 10 years. So, you know, in the meantime, I just want to do as much as I can for those that are coming back and those that have been there. I try to do as much as I can for, for homeless veterans. I can't stand that statement, homeless veteran. I've run chili challenges to benefit homeless veteran facilities here in South Jersey, and it was really, that was a lot of fun raising money for a great cause. And but
New Orleans, Baton Rouge. We have so many.
it's heartbreaking. It's freaking heartbreaking.
So many. And they'll tell you they don't want to go to shelters. I sat and talked to one night. He was an amputee, Marine. He had an arm and a leg missing, so I guess double amputee. Alcoholic, absolutely. Drug addict, absolutely. Lives in his car that's on bourbon 6 out of 7 nights out of the week. Sat and talked to him for an entire shift one night because he just sat next to my unit and decided to start talking. And I just didn't have the heart to not go back after every call I went to and leave him. And he asked him multiple times, "I'll take you to a shelter. No, they won't let me drink there. No, I have to follow their rules, and I really don't want to be around people. No, I don't want to go. I do this because this is what I want to do. I have a car around the corner. I'll sleep in it. It hasn't moved in 2 years, and they're probably going to tow it soon. But so let's move it. Let's go put it somewhere else where you can sleep." Nope, because it'll be too far away from bourbon. And what do you do? I mean, I ended up like giving one of the shelter people that I trusted, his name and where he was, and they went and talked to him, and he disappeared about a month later, maybe a couple weeks later. I don't know. Don't hold me to the timeline, but I never saw him again. I don't know if he left. I don't know if they actually got him into a program. I don't know. But it broke my heart every day that I saw this man. There's another one who's an Army vet. It's a female. She got out of the Army. She got married. She had a baby. 3 years later, her baby was killed. And she now walks up and down Bourbon with a pint in her hand and just disappears from the face of the earth every night. That's her life. She wakes up, she drinks till she disappears. And literally, I've seen this woman be able to walk through crowds and not be seen. There's so many.
Yeah.
There's just so many.
Yeah, there is, and it's horrible. It's horrible how many homeless vets that are out there.
But I mean, does not the same things, and I'm not being, the programs here that are made for them to go get help, the rules seem to be the same as the other shelters, only these are vet friendly. You know, they're like-minded and like people that are veterans. It's the only way to get into those, where the other ones are just the general public. But they still have the same kind of guidelines. Like, how do you make a shelter that won't let a drunk person into, but it's meant for the homeless, when 99% of the homeless are either drunk or on drugs because they can't cope with reality to begin with? So
Right.
what help are you really giving them?
Yeah, that's
So
that.
it's a
that's
it's
an
a
awesome
half-ass
question.
Band-Aid.
So, I mean, I don't understand the whole let's help all the veterans when they really and genuinely want you to leave them the fuck alone. Because they don't trust you.
No,
They don't
it's-
trust people. They don't want you in their business. They don't want you in their face. They don't want you near them. Unless they trust you, they're not going to listen to you.
No, I mean, think about it. A lot of the stuff out there is a Band-Aid on the surface level, right? It's there to make an organization that's putting money into it or getting money from grants and things like that to make it look like they're doing something worthwhile by on the surface being like, we're helping homeless vets, or we're helping this, or we're helping that, and we're doing these kind of things. But they're really, really very thin surface level stuff just to kind of promote themselves in a sense. And most of the time, I don't think all of them are like that, but a lot of them are. You know, a lot of them are just very surface level. We just want to look like we're doing the good things so we can keep getting funding and keep doing, you know, like pushing that agenda. Like there's no, like, where's the solution in terms of attacking the actual problem? You know, I think that's a huge part of it, is that we're not addressing the really root cause of things. We're not trying to look for outside of the box, outside of the norm solutions that actually work. It's just Band-Aids. I mean, think about the medication through the VA, for example. You know, everything, like you come in there and you got some issues, usually the go-to is medication. Some kind of medication. It's not going to address maybe what are you doing? Like what gives you purpose? Finding something that really connects with you, so it draws you out as a person. It makes you feel fulfilled, so you're not constantly depressed in the sense that I'm unfulfilled. I have no purpose. I have no direction. I don't know what to do because I just came from this crazy experience, and now I'm back here, and all I'm being given is like drugs, or I'm going to like one or two things that like an event or two, and then but there's no one that's actually, there's nothing that's pushing the mindset of like, hey, how do you find that purpose again? How do you find something that you can do that you enjoy in life that makes your mental set like much stronger? You know, it goes a long way. I think it really goes a long way, but it's not really being addressed. A lot of that's being ignored. It's being bandaged. Surface level again, just to kind of, you know, hey, we're helping out, like fucking, like that's so cool. Why aren't we talking about mental perspectives and like what gives us purpose? That's one of my biggest things that I'm trying to figure out now, because I've spent years masking the fuck out of my issues.
Yep.
Is I'm starting to realize like I don't really enjoy anything. I feel like I'm just existing to exist. I have a job. I'm just working. You know, I'm taking care of my family. I'm doing those things, sure. But there's nothing that I'm doing in my life that really gives that spark. Like when I was in the military, I had a fucking purpose, you know, and that was a great part of it. I had a tribe. I had a community. I had things that I was doing that I believed in and that I wanted to do. I was dealing with plenty of shit bags too, of course. But it was worth it because sucking it up and getting past those shit bags got me to do the mission with my buddies. You know, it got me to fucking do that kind of shit. Get out. How do you replace that? That's an important question. Like, what can we do to replace that? So we still have that sense of purpose. We have that sense of community that you don't necessarily get in an individualistic culture. Because look across the states, right? I'm kind of ranting here, but I'm just gonna fucking roll with it. But you look at typically Western cultures, it's an individualistic culture, right? Versus other cultures where it might be more collective, right? And I'm kind of in a weird experience because my parents are Middle Eastern, so I come traditionally, I was born and raised here, but my background comes from a collective culture where it's very family focused and group focused. And there's some things that they miss because of that focus. But then on the other end of it, in an individualistic culture like we have, where you have the freedom to go explore yourself and do what you want to do, we're kind of missing what gives us purpose. We're missing that tribe that we had in the military, or in a law enforcement lens, you have a tribe as well. I think that aspect relates very, very similarly. But where's the fucking purpose? I'm still trying to figure that shit out. I don't fucking know. Throwing it out there. All right, more.
Yeah, I
You
gotta
go
get
to
going.
bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Night, sweet prince.
Yes.
You comb that beard. Put it.
I know. I need to go get it taken care of. It's beautiful. What'd you say?
You let it grow.
Yes,
It grow.
yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Let it grow, because I can't. I look like a
Hey.
fucking terrorist when I grow my shit out.
I don't think you're. I'm just gonna tell you because I don't think you're on our signals chat. But Strange, Strange, just defended his. Oh man, what is it called? Freaking doctors do. Dictation. I can't speak. Dissertation.
Write and scribble. Oh, okay.
He just defended it. So he is officially now Doctor Strange. It's like
Ooh.
he's now officially. This is the awesome part. Now he's officially, as he put it, he was like, or you can say I'm Sergeant Doctor Strange or Doctor Sergeant Strange.
Mr. Sergeant Dr. Strange.
Yeah, Mr. Sergeant.
Well, maybe your purpose. Obviously, you have a heart for your fellow vets. Just start your own nonprofit. Run your own shelter.
It's called Princess Tiaras for Veterans. That's what his nonprofit's going to be.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Teach veterans how to let it go, like Elsa.
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
like,
I mean, Vern, you're not wrong.
She's
Like, I
happy.
like doing this. I think
Love
this
y'all.
is good for me. It lets me like talk to the community and like, kind of have that group, getting that NCO mindset again.
we
Yeah,
have
I think it's definitely a good benefit. Go ahead. Sorry.
we got a it's called Veterans Haven, and it's actually located next to the mental hospital in Ancora,
Yeah.
and it's run by the military vets, and it reminds me of like A school or even C school barracks, and it was kind of comforting to see how they were running it. You know what I mean? It almost felt like, they were giving them the support that they needed to move forward and get on their feet. The biggest problem I see is people aren't getting the mental help that they need. Everything's just medication, and that's not even just the military. That's, you get hurt, you go to the doctor.
Everywhere.
It's just throw meds at you, and that's not the answer. The biggest problem I think we face as a society is the lack of compassion and being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. This is why the media has made police officers out to be villains, because they don't know what it's like to put themselves in other person's shoes. They don't have the mental capacity to take themselves and put themselves away and put theirself in somebody else's shoes, and imagine what it's like to go up to a car where you don't know, if the guy's going to try and shoot you or not. And if you're going to go home and see your kids, they don't have the mental capacity because they're too freaking selfish to see what it's like to live another person's life.
Well, it's also that not a lot of conversation around like that specifically, right? What is the environment that you have to navigate in certain roles? There's no conversation about that a lot of the times on some of these channels. It's more it's a reaction to one split second event.
Right.
Sometimes that reaction is justified. A lot of the times it's not. So there's no effort made to kind of understand like what goes into that, right? And that's why stupid comments come up that we talked about earlier, like, well, maybe not stupid, but just uninformed comments come up where it's like, why don't you just shoot him in the hand?
No, that's
shoot him
stupid.
in the leg, or yeah, let's shoot him in the leg where this giant fucking artery that you can bleed out from totally exists. Like, let's totally do that. Like, that'll work out really, really great. Like that's where that comes up, is that there's no effort made to kind of bridge that gap. And it goes both ways. Honestly, both parties are guilty of it, right? Because one party is uninformed and continues to get information from a very, very small tunnel vision windowed area of focus, right? Their information is confirmation bias. Even you look at politics, that shit happens on both sides.
Right.
But at the other end, we're really bad about isolating. We don't like to talk to other people. We don't like to do shit in terms of that, right? We won't have these conversations where we have the experience and we have the perspective, but we're not always going to say it. We're going to just be like, fuck you. You weren't there. You don't get it. End of conversation. And so as painful as it is, I think folks like us having that conversation in terms of sharing that perspective, I think that goes a long way. You're not going to reach a lot of people because some people are very, very set in their ways, but I think we'll reach a lot more people. Like, I've talked to some folks about some of these kind of situations and explained my perspective of it. I was like, well, if I was in that situation, this is what would go through my mind, and this is why. But I get it. Sometimes I don't have the fucking patience to do that. I'm just like, eat a dick. Like, you just won't understand. Like, fuck off. I'm not always going to have the mindset to just want to sit down and explain shit. That's just over and over again. How many times do you have to explain
Don't do
shit?
that to your wife.
It's easier to say, eat a dick, fuck off, like so much easier to say that shit.
You can't always say that.
Just don't say it to your wife.
Don't say it to your autistic nephew either.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, you might be taking a risk with your wife. Maybe she'll take you up on it. Like, who knows? But,
yeah, right? Maybe you'll get lucky.
like, make my night.
I'm just telling you, you're not going to get lucky. I'm throwing that out there right now.
I don't know.
I know I won't.
And all I said was, what don't you understand? What is so hard about this? I mean, not even.
I mean, you got to get you a sarcastic wife, I guess, because.
I did domestic violence for a lot of years, and I would
Me
come
too.
home and I'd be practically like talking to myself, and she would look at me and go, "Well, I just don't get it," and walk away. Like, and she did it one day, and it was a really bad day, and I said, "What don't you get? What is so hard about this? Somebody is beating the crap out of their spouse. What part of that don't you understand?" And this is the difference between cops and civilians. She looked at me and said, "I get that part. What I don't get is, don't these guys ever go to sleep?"
She let her crazy come out.
The light bulb immediately went on that perhaps I should not holler at her especially before bedtime.
Because in just a little while, you're going to go to sleep.
Yep. She's got a bedpan under her.
With one eye open.
Hey, you made the mistake of teaching her how to shoot and then hide the body.
I didn't teach her to hide the body. I taught her how to get away with it.
Yeah.
I am confident that I would never do anything that stupid that she would actually have to do that.
My
Pretty
dad
confident.
taught me at a
Bold.
very young
98%.
age. My dad taught me at a very young age, prior to police, prior to anything else. I live in South Louisiana. There's not a whole lot that a rain jacket, chainsaw, and a crab trap can't solve.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
We used to have the pig farm in Hamilton, but they closed that up. So
You know, I mean, I was really, really young, but you know, that logic has made
You're
sense
like,
to
"I'm gonna
me
take it."
every day of my life.
You look
But
at
see, you
somebody,
have to-
I'm not
you
the
have to-
fucking one.
after I got out of the hospital, I like literally just broke down crying the first night. And I haven't cried since 6th grade. And I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, I can't be your hero anymore. And with
Aw.
all the love in her tone of voice that you could possibly imagine, she said, it's okay, dear. You were never my hero.
Oh,
Damn.
I like your wife.
It's like,
She's putting you in your place,
exact-
man.
it was the exact right thing to say at that time.
that's so funny.
That's a quality partner, you know.
Yeah, I like her.
Yeah.
You don't ever want to boost up the ego too much. Like here and there, sure,
No.
but never too much.
Yeah.
My
but
wife
she-
does that shit to me all the time.
She knows when I just need somebody to hold me and when I need somebody to, give me that
Put their foot in
figurative
your ass.
slap and say, pull your head out of your butt and man up. But goes both ways.
It's awesome.
I was having a really, really bad time at the airport coming home from the cruise. And I don't know what I must have looked like, but somebody brought
Hey, ball, go to bed.
somebody brought a handicapped assist chair over for me to sit on and said, we'll send somebody over to push you over to your gate if you need it. And my wife came over and decided she was going to push me to the gate. And I'm like, please, this is bad enough. I do not want people seeing my wife push me to the gate. And she said, shut up, you're going to have trouble walking. And she tried to push the chair. I did not tell her until we got on the plane that the reason she couldn't push the chair was because there was a brake on it.
That's fucked up.
That's funny.
That's funny.
I walked to the gate. But, oh, God, I'm still paying for that. I think it's that toxic masculinity they talk about where nobody...
It
Yes,
is,
that
yeah.
is
That's why she was trying to
example
just
of
be like,
toxic-
hey, I got you.
Yeah, that is definitely an example of toxic masculinity.
I just,
We
I just-
suffer from it too. Don't think that y'all are the only ones that have it, because we suffer from it too.
Yeah, I just couldn't bear at that moment to have that happen. I would have been okay if she called the guy back and let him push her, just as long as it wasn't her.
Gotta be like Elsa, man. Let that shit go.
Right? Let it go.
Let it go. Yeah, let it go. Let him. You know what? Like I love when I'm like, if I'm fucked up, and I need to take a knee. I love when my wife takes care of me. Normally it's just like, whenever somebody needs it, like we got you, like we'll take care of each other if we need it. But she like my back's all fucked up. Like I remember fucked it up recently, but I remember the first time when we were together where she noticed it. Like I had So I got in, and if you don't, like, I got blown up by the Air Force on my first deployment. They fucked up a bomb drop and like dropped it in front of us. So my back's like pretty messed up from that. And then I just, carried on and kept like carrying over 100 pounds of gear and shit. So it only made it worse over the years. And so I went to like last winter, I went to bend down to like untie my boot, and it just pinched a nerve in my back. And it immediately collapsed me. Like I fucking smashed onto the ground hard. And so my wife's in the kitchen, and all she hears is a thud, and then me going like, ugh, just like grunting through it, like, ugh, because I'm, I was like, I'm not gonna scream, I'm just gonna, and she just hears thud and she like comes over and like starts taking care of me and shit, and then she gets the bath and like dumps Epsom salt in it and like drags me over there and helps me in there, and she's like, do you want to self-medicate? And I was like, yes, please. And then she comes back out with a glass of bourbon, and I was like, oh, yeah. She just babied the shit out of me for the next few days, and it was awesome, and I appreciated it so much. No shame. There was a little bit of shame. I was like, there was a little bit of that toxic man, where I was just like, I'm going to fucking do it. But she was like, no, you're an idiot. Like, you're going to fuck yourself up. And she'd just shit on me. Like, she'd call me out hardcore, shit on me, and I'd be like, God damn it, you're right. And I'd just fucking take it and be like, all right, baby the shit out of me. And it was great. I loved it.
It's sad.
It means they care.
You have to admit it. It's sad. Yeah,
it is, but it's a beautiful thing that you have somebody who's willing to take care of you.
We fought on the cruise ship after I fell, and she's like following me around and trying to carry a cup of coffee for me and grabbing my plate out of my. And I finally said, "Let me do it myself." And she goes, "Well, you think you don't need me?" I said, "No, I do need you, but I need a wife, not a mother." That was the wrong thing to say.
Yeah, well,
I would imagine so.
Now I knew she couldn't go anywhere because we're on a ship. Where's she going to go? But it took me like over 2 hours to find her, and I only found her because she finally responded to a text message and told me where she was at. Right. And I'm trying to apologize to her, and she looks at me and says, "I get it. You want to do things yourself." I said, "No, that's not why I'm apologizing." I said, "I'm apologizing because I don't like what you did, but you did it out of love. I did what I did out of frustration, specifically to try and hurt you a little bit so you'd leave me alone." I said, and that's the difference, and that's why I'm wrong and you're okay.
Well, think about it this way. Think about it this way, Bruno. I try to do the perspective shift, and I think it helps with a lot of things. But in that situation, right? When your wife's hurting, even if she's not, but like let's say she's gone through some shit, she's hurting. You're gonna go out of your way to take care of her, right? Like you're not gonna take no for an answer. You're gonna fucking do everything under the sun to make sure she's squared away.
Yeah.
Baby the shit out of her. But the moment she does that to you, it changes.
It just feels.
It's a different response, but it's the same thing. It's like what's that saying? It's like
the goose is not
like
good
two
for
of the same wings on a bird.
Yeah.
So it's like, why is it okay for us to do that for them, but not okay for them to do that for us? And it shouldn't be that way. It should be okay for it to go both ways. It should be that's part of being in a partnership, any kind of partnership. Whether it's romantic or not,
It's tough getting used to it though.
That way.
I
It
think
is. I mean, you're used to.
Goes back to how they're all raised. So females are inadvertently raised to be submissive, to be the mom, the family. We are taught to take care of everyone around us. Simultaneously, we are masters of being able to multitask and really don't pay a whole lot of mind to getting the recognition and thanks for it. The majority of us, I won't say that about all of us, where you guys are raised to be very masculine. I don't need help. I can take care of it. Don't go outside the house. Everything stays here. Everything is between me and you, stays between me and you. There's nothing that I can't handle. And I'm just speaking from my own household. So I don't know if that's true or not on your part, but
It's true.
that's how the guys in my family were raised. You know, there's no problem too big and nothing leaves the house. So I think that's where that mentality comes from and passes into a marriage and or a partnership, however you want to say it. But it ends up being very dismissive to us, as if you don't think that we are capable of taking care of you when we have spent our entire life taking care of everyone around us. What makes you think you're so goddamn special?
Well, I think my grandson said it. My grandson said it the best, because he told me, he says, you better go apologize to her. He says, because you act like you went through everything by yourself, and you don't know how many times she was home crying while you were away. And he was right. I mean, it's sad I got to get love advice from a 14-year-old, but
Sometimes that's what it takes, man. That's why the perspective shift is important, because that's honestly, like, everything you describe, Rose, like, that's a lot of pressure for a woman to grow up with, and that's a lot of pressure for a dude to grow up with. Like, why do we have to? And I think the way things are these days, it's starting to shift away from that slowly, but that mentality still exists. You know, it still exists. It's changing, but it still exists, and that's just, maybe it worked centuries ago, you know, when like a woman had, like, couldn't leave the house and, like, had to, like, do everything, but that's not how society is these days, at least not our society. You know?
yeah, it's weird. Like, some things don't bother
It doesn't
me.
apply.
Some things don't bother me, but some things, like, most of the time we were married, I worked all the time until I couldn't anymore. And I always had 2, sometimes 3 jobs. And now I'm not working and she's working 2 jobs. And that doesn't bother me. But it's like, I could tell when she's upset, because I'll go up to her and I'll go, you got sad eyes. You look like you're about to cry. And now she's coming and telling me that. And it's hard getting used to that.
It is, but I think
But when
finding
she tells
a way
me
to
that, she makes me
understand
feel
it,
better.
That connects y'all. Yeah, it goes a long way in, like, kind of respecting the other person and appreciating them a lot more. You know.
In the end, I think it all comes together because you realize that, all right, so I want to be sarcastic in part of this, and it is just being sarcastic, but there is a little bit of truth in it, in my mind, in the way I see things, and maybe just in the culture here in Louisiana, is that the guys seem to get a little older, a little faster than we do. So you get a little scared of losing the comfort that you do have. So then you start to rely on us a little more. Or 2, the sarcastic end is that we just look better than y'all do longer, and you're not our only option anymore. So accept it or get over it.
I was never, well, I take that back. She says I was always her only option, but I don't think so.
Yeah, my wife definitely aged better than I did.
I'd like to say good night to everybody. It was nice meeting all of you guys. And I'll probably be on here on Monday nights going forward from here. It was great seeing you guys. Great listening to the stories. And thank you. Good night.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Stephen, man.
Thanks for stopping in. That was a nice affair on that Saturday, wasn't it?
What's that?
Were you at the thing on Saturday night?
Oh yeah, at the yes.
At TJ's.
Oh, Bruno.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, you were one taking the pictures.
Yeah, I look different without a camera in my hand.
Right, right. Yes, yes, it was very nice, and it was amazing to see some of the guys that I haven't seen, some of the guys I haven't seen in 16 years. But yeah, I had a great time. I hope you did too. I hope you did too. Yeah,
Yeah, I did. I did have a great time, and
Bye.
James is going to be sending a link over for the pictures, so you guys will be able to download them and enjoy them.
Bye.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm on the committee for next year, so we'll be working together. So I'm looking forward to getting more people in next year. So, all right. Good night, everybody, and
Have a good one.
I'll see you guys. I don't know how to turn
Good
it
night,
off.
man.
There we go.
I'm gonna start winding down too. Betty bye time for me.
That was interesting tonight. Did that go the way you thought it was going to go, or
You know,
at that time?
I don't go in expecting anything. I just like the topic comes into mind and my brain is too squirrely to think of like this topic is interesting to me. I'm gonna bring it up, you know. And I really liked the way the conversation went. It was a lot of different perspectives I didn't even think about. Yeah, it was really good.
Oh, civilians, police, military, we all think a little bit different.
Yeah, there's different dynamics, but I think some of the core stuff is the same, you know. I think finding a way to bridge those gaps is really good. It's been a good.
I do
it's been a
know
good night, man.
that I see people get mad when something happens and they automatically want to crucify the cop, and they get mad when I don't jump on that bandwagon. And I go, first of all, I did internal affairs. I know there is more to that story than is out. And when it's all out, the cop may still be wrong, but it's not all out yet. So I'm not nailing somebody to the cross until I know everything.
No, it's hard. Yeah, it's really hard to make that kind of judgment without the full picture because there's so much that goes into it that you just never see. You know, actually, before I get off, I'm going to tell a story. I remember my second deployment. We had I'm not saying this 100% relates to shit in the States, but it's. I think some of it can overlap. Where we had these systems that would pick up when a rocket or mortar would come in, and it would set off an alarm. And they were able to they tied it in so they could see exactly where it was coming from as well. So it's not just an alarm goes off, but you can get eyes on as it's happening. So there was a rocket or mortar that was launched at the base. The alarms went off, everyone runs to cover. Shit blows up somewhere, and they see where it's at, and they see on thermals, they see two groups of people jumping on these motorcycles, driving off from the launch site of where the rocket was launched, right? So they were all involved in the launch. They see this happening. They see the launch site. You know, the rocket launches, they see it, they see the trail, they see the people jumping on the bikes, and they see them fucking leaving. Those are legitimate targets for us. That's something that you can kill. Enemy fighters, right? And so while the quick reaction force, is getting spun up to go fucking interdict, the Apaches got spun up too. So Apaches, of course, are going to get there faster than vehicles on the ground. Apaches fly in and start engaging these guys. So they hit the first motorcycle, and it had a few people on it. They hit the first motorcycle with a Hellfire missile and blew that shit the fuck up. Gas tank, the fuel tank ignited. One of the people was on fire running around. You see them burning. And they hit the other motorcycle, like the other motorcycle slows down, and they hit the other motorcycle with a 30mm chain gun and kill the shit out of those people. And when the QRF gets on the scene, they find out that the person that burned to death was like this young mom, young woman, and she had her kid with her. She had must have been like 2-3 years old, right? Kid gets the blast, kills him instantly, decapitates him, right? Kid's decapitated. You find the head in one spot and the body in another spot. They had done that on purpose, right? They forced that young mom with her kid with them so they could go launch this rocket and drive away, knowing that there was a good 50-50 chance that we would manage to go in and actually kill the people who drove left from the scene. And they did that so they could use it as propaganda against us. And immediately, that propaganda was pumped out, locally. It was the Americans killed an innocent kid, right? They totally ignored all the other people that were dead that were part of the rocket attack that launched it, that forced this mom and her kid onto the bike with them.
Right.
Just as fucking bait for propaganda. Ignored all that stuff. So it was put totally out of perspective. Totally out of perspective, and it caused an investigation. It caused all this drama and shit, and then the locals were just fucking enraged at us. They were enraged at us, and that was causing other issues. And then we had to worry about insider threat attacks and things like that. It was just because they knew that they could twist it out of proportion by playing their cards right and ruin the whole situation for us completely. They knew we would react with force, seeing that a rocket was launched and people are leaving the rocket launch attack. They're leaving the launch site, they're leaving the poo site, the point of origin, after leaving the launcher and all that shit. They know we're going to engage them if we can get to them, right? They know all this shit, and they did it just so they could use that shit as propaganda against them, drive the people wild. So that's part of the overlap. When you don't have the full picture and the full context, right? If you're coming at the law enforcement lens, and again, that doesn't specifically tie into it, but it's with the full picture. If you're leaving a lot out and you're only pinpointing on one very narrow, tunnel vision focused view of what happened, and you're seeing this, right? Let's say you're somebody that's just checking this out on the news, or you're seeing it on social media. You really you got to take the time to stop and dig into it and ask, what was the context around it? What am I not seeing? You might be seeing what happened. Sure, 100%. You might be seeing what happened. But there's a good chance, too, that you're only seeing a small picture just to incite a reaction. There's a good chance that happens. And that's not just with law enforcement, but that's with a lot of the political stuff. That's with a lot of the global stage, the way that the globe is responding to a lot. That is used very effectively, and people ignore that shit.
Yeah,
It's a dangerous thing.
you have to deal with that all the time. Everything
That sucks.
is on as presented. Nothing. I don't think that we've ever decapitated a kid, and burned them.
But you guys don't have Apache helicopters,
Right. Yeah, that's going with that. We also don't have the tools that y'all have, and we don't, they're not launching mortars at us. Well, oh God, I hope they don't ever. But it's a different context, but it's the same exact thing. It's George Floyd and all these other people that were just trash people, but are now last I heard, because I don't watch the news anymore. I've told you that before. I absolutely avoid live TV as much as I can. I stream everything so that I can pick and choose what I'm exposed to. But the last I heard is that they're trying to change his past or his legacy. How and why? The man did what he did. His life was what it was. You can't change it because you feel like you want to. He did what he did. It was what he was. And yeah, it's unfortunate that he died, but because he really needed to go to court and go through all the crap that is, part of the justice system. But and by his dying, he becomes some sort of a martyr, which he didn't deserve, in my opinion. Is just my opinion. But this is, across the board with all of the things that, like you're talking about, propaganda and their ability to try to stand on some shaky ass soapbox. And this gave it, like an extra board in it. I don't know. I get
It's tough
agitated.
because that stuff exists. Like some people, I believe some folks are doing it because they genuinely believe a certain thing that they're saying, But I think a lot of people take advantage of it purely just to spin things out and stir shit up and just cause more chaos. So it's hard. Every situation is difficult. It's hard. I think it really helps to look at both sides of it. Because honestly, there's not necessarily both sides. There's often, I think, many sides, not just two. There's a lot of different sides. Like, how did things lead up into that? What was the circumstances of like everything that led to a certain situation? What was the dynamic of the environment, the culture? Like, there's
Yeah.
so many aspects to factor in that creates a situation the way it is, which creates a situation the way it can be tunnel visioned, So there's a lot of craziness going on, but it's hard because people will take advantage of that kind of stuff. And it totally ruins any type of good behind. If there is good, it'll ruin any type of good behind it because people.
The media is totally out of control. They really are. Have you guys heard the new freaking COVID commercials? Where the
No.
girl's crying, saying that she wish she got the COVID shot? Talk about fear mongering.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. So I'm very pro vaccination, but I think that's wrong, right? I think it's wrong to come at it from an angle of fear. That's not okay. It's really not. There's so many different ways you can go about it.
I'm very
So-
pro-choice. I think that if you want to not get it, then you should know upfront that you have to live by a certain standard. This COVID
Right.
thing has taught us all that we can live at our house and not be exposed to other people. So if you are going to not get the vaccine and expect everyone to accept you for that, then stay at home. Learn to live from home, work from home, be at home. That way, if you do catch it, it only affects you and your home.
Yeah, but a lot of folks don't do that though. A lot of folks. That's
Well,
part of the issue too. That's what fuels the other side of the argument is that there's folks that don't do it that way, right? It's your decision to go it or not, but then there's folks that will choose not to, but then go out and about in a way that exposes a lot of other folks, right? So it's both sides have validity, but both sides are making it harder for each other,
right.
We're
So
talking about something that
the total
kills
shit
less
show.
people. We're talking about something that kills less people than freaking drunk drivers.
Well, so
I mean, so we
so
really
the
want
thing
to
is like
bring this
to
thing.
date though, it's actually worse than the way what was that last pandemic that the country had in like the 20s?
Spanish flu.
It's worse than that. Yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's worse than that. And the thing is, I get it. Like, look, it might not affect most people in a way that causes death, but to date, it's actually killed over almost 700,000 folks in a year, just about like in a year time frame. That's
But
a lot of people.
But all right, okay, well, let's look at the total picture now. Nobody's died from influenza when it's usually 180,000 people that have died every year from influenza. Nobody has died from that. So what happened to all the people that would have got the common cold?
Oh.
And died?
Okay.
That's
So-
because the masks work on that.
But
Accurate?
what you're saying is that right now, everybody who dies is being deemed as dead by COVID.
Yeah,
And
because
and
hospitals are
you
getting
know,
money for it.
like you would like to have the
That's-
real statistics as to how many were flu, how many were COVID, how many were gunshots, how many were alligator eatings. You know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
agree. with you. I also agree with him, and I think that being pro-choice, I'm also pro-consequence. If you make a choice that is bad for everyone else for public safety, then your consequence is to have to live at home and live.
But how
Fine.
is if you get the COVID vaccine, you can still get COVID. You can
Yeah.
still give it to other people. So how is that helping anybody else by condemning a certain group of people to their home when you're just as
Well, so
susceptible?
Let me
that's
ask-
the thing is with that. Let's hold on. Let's go with the guidelines of like people with in the field, right? The guidelines that are coming from like something like the CDC is that even if you're vaccinated, if you go outside, you're supposed to wear a mask to prevent, because the mask isn't to stop you from getting it. It's to make it much less likely that you spread it to somebody else. And that's the whole point of that.
Mhm.
And that's why they were trying to push that. It's certain states are taking and interpreting these things differently. So that's at the
Right.
state level though. And that's
Like
part of the problem is each
That's-
state is trying to do its own thing. And every state, some states that are hard left are going to overreact in a crazy, crazy way. Other states are going to not react enough. So it's going to cause problems, right? But the entity that hires tons of professionals that have doctorates in this kind of field are saying that even if you have the vaccine, you're supposed to wear a mask in these kind of spaces, you know? So to me, that makes sense because that's typically how those things work. But
And I want to ask this. So when you, I don't know you, so I don't know, do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? Do you have brothers and sisters?
Me?
Like, no, a friend to lean on.
Oh.
No, I don't have any children. I do have brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews.
Okay. Your brothers and sisters had children. They get them vaccinated as children. Not against COVID, but like the vaccines that all babies are given when they're born.
Right.
Like
The ones that have been years and years of research.
measles, whatever.
Right. The ones that have been
Hold on,
tested.
can I address that one really quick?
Years and years of research back when medical was not nowhere, it was nowhere near as sophisticated as it is now. With the leaps and bounds of medical technology as made today, for them to take 20 years to create a vaccine would be ludicrous. Be absolutely fucking ludicrous. And I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't have anything to do with it because it's a bunch of fucking yahoos in a fucking playroom with hands and pens smacking each other in the head that made that vaccine. If it took 20 for them to make it today, where if the lab that they're working in is state of the art, which it is, and these doctors have come from the best schools that this country has put out in other countries as well, I'm more inclined to take that vaccine than the vaccines we were given as kids that haven't fucked me up yet. So I'm not pro-vaccine or pro-not vaccine. I'm pro-choice, and your choice to not take that vaccine on a stance that, well, it only took them 6 months to create it, doesn't make any sense to me. Because, like I said, unless they're beating each other in the fucking head with a pan, it shouldn't have taken them that long to make it today. Not in today's medical world.
So here's on top of that too, though. You got to think it was like I think we have a fallacy where we tend to think of this like this is a very U.S. issue. It was it was a global issue pretty rapidly, right? It was across the globe that it was starting to impact people, and people were reacting to it. The reaction to that was that the scientists and the virologists across the globe got together and worked together to create a solution with the technology that we have now. That's why it came out faster. It's not just one small lab trying to work on something. It was so many different places across the globe all working together to speed the process up, which in that way it makes sense. That's why it got to the point that it did, is because they were able to pool their resources together. Now, any vaccine in general, there's no 100% guarantee. But the point is, I mean, to your point, Rose, like, if you're going to choose not to get it, which is like if you have concerns, if you're concerned about your own medical health and things like that, totally understandable. You shouldn't be shit on for that. But if you're going to choose not to get it during a time where this thing has killed, it's killed over 650,000 people in the States alone. That's one virus that has killed, I think, just about or just a little more than all types of cancer have killed in the same amount of time frame, right? That's a serious thing. That's a serious thing.
I'm not saying that it's
That's not something to ignore.
I'm not saying that
right,
it's not.
but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're choosing to take the direction of like, look, I don't want to take something because it just, I don't want to rely on it yet. Then it makes sense to me to take a more, like, let me at least take an approach where I'm not exposing a lot of other people. Because the thing is, like, even if, like, there's folks that I've heard that are like, well, I got it and nothing crazy happened to me. I got a little sick and that was it. Well, it's like, okay, cool. But if you were carrying it and you spread it to somebody else who doesn't have the same immune system as you and they die, that's another family that has all sorts of friends that's lived a life, that known this person, that now all of a sudden has to deal with the death of somebody, right? That's the balance. It's a hard balance.
I totally agree with what you're saying, but the problem is, even if you get the vaccine, it does not prevent you from getting it and spreading it. The only thing the vaccine does is help you.
It's not supposed to.
When you get it.
But that's
what it's supposed to do. That's all vaccines do. It never stops it from. Typically, most vaccines aren't going to stop it from spreading. It's going to. And vaccines are only. That's why so many vaccines are from birth, is because if the whole population is, as a whole, like pretty much vaccinated against a lot of this shit, then you don't have anything to really worry about in terms of a massive outbreak. That's also why, for decades, almost every single school system, almost every single university requires certain vaccines if you want to attend there. And that's not anything new. It's because they understand that's how viruses work. If all the people attending are vaccinated. What's that?
What was it, 10 years ago when parents started being non-vaxxers, where they didn't want to have their kids vaccinated? And that's where we had the homeschool system blow up like you've never seen before, because schools said, that's fine. You don't have to have your child vaccinated, but we don't have to allow them to attend here and affect everybody else, which is why I'm saying I'm pro-choice. If you want to be non-vaccine, go be non-vaccine. But there are things that you are going to stop yourself from being able to do. You're not going to be able to travel. I can almost guarantee that, outside of your country. I can almost guarantee that. You're not going to be able to join any kind of military, law enforcement, government job whatsoever. And if you have some of those, are let go now. So you're going to limit your choices to begin with. Private properties such as businesses, stores, theaters, doctors' offices, stuff like that are going to say, if you're not vaccinated, you have to do it video chat. You can't do it here on our property because you haven't been vaccinated. And you can't say they can't require proof of vaccination because you allow public schools to require your child to have proof of vaccination. It's not against your HIPAA rules. So there is a consequence, good and bad, to not being vaccinated. Do I enjoy the fact that I didn't have the choice? No. Do I enjoy the fact that this is an issue in our country that now we all have to have this conversation about? No, because I think it's a no-brainer. If it's for a public safety thing, you should do what you have to do. If it is something that's going to hold you back in your own life, you should do what you have to do, and no one should have to force you to do it. However, if it is not one of those situations for you and you have the ability to stay home, why wouldn't you? Because I am so introverted, I would be like, bitch, you can't come within 6 feet of me.
What
The law.
what do you say to the person that has had all kinds of reactions to different medicine? His doctor recommends that they don't get the shot, and their job requires them to go out and be in public.
I mean,
Rights. And consider the fact that there's a 99.9% chance you're going to survive if you get it. My sister personally got it, was asymptomatic, had no symptoms whatsoever. Her husband had what he said was like allergies. Their daughter never got it. I was in a car with somebody who was positive. I tested negative. How is that possible? Is this so dangerous?
So Vern, then why has over 650,000 people died, right? You can't. That's a hard thing to do, is judge your experience off the whole, right? Your experience and the people you know, that's a small part of the pie.
I'm going to say follow the money. I think this is more about money and then making money over anything else.
I think
How
some of
many
it,
people have paid for this vaccine, though? No one's paying for the vaccine.
I think that some of you, some of it is right. I think you're
Companies are-
of it. I think as far as like the boosters and the home tests and stuff like that, yeah, I think that might be more of a money thing. But the original test, you weren't paying to be tested and you weren't paying to be vaccinated. It was all being given out. And if you did pay, whoever charged you fucking price gouged, because the government gave it out.
Fuck you.
My wife,
They're gonna have it for free.
my wife's work required her to get tested. She had to pay for it.
That's wrong. But most places don't do that, though. That's fucking wrong.
This was this year.
I know our union insurance company pays for the vaccine.
That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of it is because it's a new thing, and it's a global issue too. We got to stop thinking it from the lens of just the U.S. It's a global issue. A lot of people are trying to respond to it by and that's why we pay for insurance, is so they can pay for this kind of shit. Like I'm like, yeah, insurance is paying for it, but we're paying for insurance, so. Yeah, they better fucking pay for my goddamn vaccine.
See, here's
like,
I got the for
look
free.
at how vaccines worked in the past, right? Let's just look at the history of the influenza vaccines, right?
You can't bring up the flu shot, because the flu is a constant evolving infection.
So
It-
COVID's not.
Well, that's what this is
No,
becoming.
COVID is exactly like it. But
That was the whole
we're
other.
not trying to take a shot to beat something through a season. This is something that's persisted for almost 2 years. We're over a year and a half into this shit.
Right, but it's evolving and
If
changing.
you want to make an argument based on the vaccine stuff, here's the greatest argument in the world. Polio had almost been wiped off the face of the fucking earth because of the vaccines, right? It has reemerged in the United States because of the anti-vaccine movement. This is
I'm not saying all vaccines.
that is something that will take your legs from you.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all vaccines are bad.
But
I'm
with
not an anti-vaxxer.
everybody's got to look at this at one thing. Everybody should have to fucking have the freedom to choose.
Well, hold on. We're kind of beating up on Vern. So Vern,
No.
let me ask you this. How do you feel, kind of coming at the angle Rose is talking about, right? If you're making the choice of like, look, this is not something I want to take. How do you feel about like going out in public and and like being in crowds and being in those things without at least wearing a mask or something like that? What's your approach to, like, how are you taking this, I guess?
I'll wear a mask. I don't care. But I'll be damned
Okay.
if I'm going to stay in my house like a freaking hermit. You know, I'm an American.
No, I think the mask makes
I
sense.
serve in my country to
Yeah.
go to work and earn a living.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's a sensible solution. If it's like, if you're not going to take, if that's not something you want to do, then a mask would make sense. The only thing I'm seeing though is that like some folks are completely against the mask in general too,
Right.
and that's where I'm confused. That's where I'm caught up on. That's the part that I'm having a
I
hard
can
time
tell you-
understand.
This is why people were against the mask. First, the masks don't really work. It might help a little bit, but it really don't work. All right. If you can fart and still smell it, the masks don't work. You want to wear a respirator that's used for painting? That works because you can fart all day long. You'll never smell it.
So on that, Vern, there are actually recent studies where they've done it against massive populations. I think it wasn't in India, but it was somewhere around there where they had huge populations that were like really close together, and they had two test groups, and the groups were large. I mean, these are large populations, and they had part of them wearing masks and part of them not, and there was a significant difference in how the virus is spreading with the group that was wearing it versus that wasn't. So there's actually recent things showing that like the masks do, because the point of the mask is that you're not spreading it. Like if you're breathing out some of the stuff, if you're wearing the right one, it's going to keep it from, it's not going to protect you from getting it. That's not the point of it at all.
Right.
It's that if you have it and you don't recognize that you have it, it's a lot less likely that you're going to give it to somebody else who might be more like prone to a bad reaction, right? And so that is, it's a recent thing, but there are newer studies coming out where they tested against larger populations and they have seen like significant differences.
Right.
But that's my biggest thing is like if you're choosing not to get it, like cool, like do you, baby, but what's the approach to that? You know, because it is a public concern, like it's a public health concern and a safety
Right.
concern.
And I get that. Like, I work with a bunch of linemen, and we had a guy that was sick in his camper for like a week. Because we're on the road. I'm up in upstate New York, and we just got to talk from the boss about, you know, if you're feeling any symptoms, blah blah blah, give us a call. Don't come in. Blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. Well, a couple days goes by. I wake up in the middle of the night. I got, you know, this guy still hasn't been back to work. Right? I wake up in the middle of the night. I got a massive headache. I can't even have any sound, any light whatsoever. It's a migraine. I've never had one before. I've got cold sweats. I feel sick to my stomach. I'm like, oh, great. I wonder if that dude had COVID. Now I got it. So I called the boss. He says, all right, go get tested. So I went and got tested. Waiting for the results. The place I got tested at had a flood. So I couldn't get the results. So now I'm stuck in a hotel room. I'm not getting per diem. I'm not getting paid because I'm not going to work. So I told the boss, I said, you know, I'm going to go get a self-test kit. Comes with 2 in the pack. I watched the videos online on how to do it. Plus I read the instructions twice because I want to make sure that I did it right, because obviously I don't want to take it home if I do have it. Both came back negative. And I told the boss, I said, no, I'm going home. You know, because they were mandating that I stay out of work for 10 days. And, which, you know, hey, fine. Even though I tested negative, they were still making me stay out of work for 10 days. So I went home. You know, my original test came back negative. And I had the blood test done. I've never had it. I've been around people that have had it. You know, I wash my hands before I eat. I don't stick my fingers in my mouth. You know what I mean? Personal hygiene, I think, is the problem. People don't do personal hygiene. And that's why we're still having this issue.
Well, I wore the stupid mask. I tried to stay 6 foot away from everybody. I still got it. Then I had a stroke from it. Then I almost bled out from the blood thinner they gave me to counteract the stroke. It's like, then I got vaccinated. So
Why
Now
would
I'm
you
gonna-
get vaccinated if you already have the antibody?
because they don't stay in your system all that long.
So then technically I could have had it before it was actually pronounced in March, was it? Because in January I was sick as a dog. But I didn't get the blood test until recently.
Well, it's also gonna mutate too. That's the thing, is like, so if you had it, it's just like the flu. That's why they do flu shots every season, like every year, I guess, is because it's constantly changing, and that's what this has become. It's starting to become something that, like, it's gonna change. So you could have had it before, and that, honestly, that'll probably still help, but it's not gonna help as much if you hit a different strain. You know, if it mutates and it gets you again, that's not gonna hit the same.
My whole thing is I was forced to get the flu shot when I was in the service. Every year I got sick as a freaking dog.
Yep.
Got out. I stopped getting the shot. I stopped getting sick. Let's see. Do I want to get sick every year or not get sick? I'm going to go with not get sick. And it worked out better for me. I don't know the long-term effect of what these new COVID vaccines are going to have on the population. One.
And here's
Two,
the
I
thing.
don't know if they
Nobody's gonna know that. It's that's the unknown that's got everybody afraid, because of also all the misinformation that's been thrown out there, which is more than the current or the proper information.
Yes.
And
That's
I was
the dangerous part.
wor-
There's a
I was
lot of
worried-
misinformation.
I was
going
worried
on.
about getting it. You know, I got sick. My arm fucking hurt for a day. The first shot, I got sick off the second shot for a day, but I made it through. A soldier that a buddy of mine over here got the first shot, and he had one of the complications with the enlarged heart.
Mhm.
And that was the only change. We're dealing with my wife's coworker passed away, and right now the determining factor of why she died is either the COVID shot, but they don't know exactly what day she got it, her first shot, or she was stung by a bee while she was at work. So, I mean, everybody's worried about the fucking. Make the best informed decision you can make.
Yeah, I look at it from the standpoint of I've had reactions to medicine in the past. So to me, it's a no-brainer. If I've had reactions to medicine in the past, I don't really feel as though I'll roll the dice and take my chances of getting sick. And 99% chance I'll live from it. Rather than guaranteeing myself to have something injected into me. And what could happen.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because everyone's going to react differently to all these things, right?
Right.
For the most part, most people will react positively, and it's not going to be an issue. But some people do react negatively. Like that's part of how any of these vaccines work. Is that it's not 100%. It's not 100% going to do it. And if that's not something you want to take, like we were talking about earlier, right? If that's not something you want to do, if that's not a risk you want to take, then just take measures that makes, like, if you're out in public, like, you're good. You're not, it's not as much of an issue for potentially hitting other folks with it. That's the biggest thing to me. I think that's a pretty simple resolution, because again, like, a lot of people are dying from this. So it's like, is it really any skin off our backs? Like, I'm vaccinated. I'll wear a mask if I'm in public, like, because I'm also, like, if I get it and I don't know it, and if I'm already vaccinated and my body didn't react negatively to it, I could carry it without even realizing it.
Right.
And that's not something I want to pass to, like, my parents.
Right.
My dad's not vaccinated. He hasn't decided to do that.
Right.
So that's not, yeah, and that's all it is. I think the conversation, because it got so politicized and because there's been so much misinformation on both sides being pumped out, we're at each other's throats, and we shouldn't have to be. It's more of a, like, listen, like, Vern, I respect you. Like, I've been talking to you for a while now. You've been on all these times. Like, I know you're a good fucking dude, and I know the decisions you're making are not to be a piece of shit. It's because you're concerned about something that matters to you. And I'm not gonna. There's no sense in me coming at you for that, and vice versa, right? But that's part of the issue too, is that everyone's hardcore coming at each other, and it's making it more politicized, and people are going to more extremes because of it.
Well,
It shouldn't be that way, right?
Look at the
Informed decisions. Go ahead. Sorry.
Look at the organizations that have been putting out a lot of the information. They have been forcing that issue of trying to divide because of this one fucking decision. They have made it out to be, I mean, they've demonized everyone who's making that choice not to get the vaccine.
Right.
You are the reason for our country's downfall. They're
Right.
taking individual response.
Like, yeah, quote unquote.
I mean, if you look at the way the news is being I'm not going to say being
That's
orchestrated,
how
but
it pumps it out. Yeah.
how it's being pumped out. It's, it's always the shell game. Oh, here's a new thing right here. We're going to distract you from all these things.
Mm-hmm.
People need to quit fucking following the media so goddamn much. Just start trying to be normal fucking people.
Right. Where's my scarlet letter?
That's yeah.
Yeah, if
That's
somebody
one of the
doesn't want
most-
to take the
that's one of the
vaccine,
most-
they want to take their chances. That's up to them.
Right. See, I
got it.
It's not even about that. It's just like, whatever decision you make, you have to be respectful of the things around you and the people around you, regardless, right? The folks that think that the vaccine magically makes them, because that's some of the mindset on the other side of the house is that people think they get the vaccine and they're never gonna spread that shit again. They just go willy-nilly and fucking run around. That's not how it fucking works.
You
Like,
could
still have
still
to be
get
smart
it
about this shit.
And now be
Yeah.
totally non-symptomatic.
and spread
Right, because it's supposed to only help you out if you get it. It's not supposed to stop it from spread. So it's just like both sides of the house are going crazy with just misinformation and just, that's part of a bigger issue too. I'm glad you guys are bringing this up. Is that a lot of the focus for the past few years has been things that divide us as a nation, right? Now I want you to, and I think a lot of it is pushed from foreign state actors. I might be going conspiracy theory here, but I think a lot of foreign state actors have a huge amount of influence on causing that division. They have a lot to gain. Now you think about it from a military lens, right? When you want to hit a target, when you want to hit an objective, you want to hit them where they're at their base, where at their strongest, or do you want to divide and conquer?
Right.
You want to weaken them, separate them, and hit them there, or not, right? Do you want to hit them when they're at their strongest? Which one do you want to fucking do, right? Obviously, rhetorical question, you divide and conquer, right? That's why that's a saying, and that's what's happening, and that's, to me, that's part of the bigger picture. That's part of the bigger issue, is that we're being, whether it's internal or external, we're being divided as a nation, right? We're being forced to pick sides, very partisan, very just two sides of a coin we're forced to pick, and then we're never going to see a middle ground. We're never going to listen to what are the legitimate things that the other side of what I believe in, like the other opposition, what are the legitimate things they're bringing up? Because the moment you divide us like that, we're never going to see the actual shit that they're talking about that makes sense. And they're never going to see the actual shit that we're talking about that makes sense. And we're going to be blinded by the stuff that we're talking about that doesn't make sense, because we're so focused on that just division. That's our most dangerous enemy right now, is anything that causes division.
Look
The
at
COVID stuff,
what's
the
happened.
political stuff, anything of that, I always try to question it, and I fall prey to it too. Like I'll get into it too sometimes, but But you got to ask yourself, like, is this dividing us more or is it not? And if it's
Look
something
at
that
what-
divides us,
Look at what we've done as a nation in the last year and a half. We have, instead of embracing even our bad history, we have become a society that would rather erase it. So it didn't happen. But we don't want to be honest about our history.
So we're doomed to repeat it.
We have
yes.
basically eliminated the power of our agencies to not control but police ourselves. You have cops who have dropped out at a record fucking number over the last year, taking early retirements, sacrificing their retirements just to get the fuck out. We just disbanded our fucking traffic division up here because in the last year our local police department has lost 30 officers. And only like 3 or 4 were due to them actually being in a position to be able to retire.
Not for nothing, hate to be conspiracy theorists, but the New World Order is coming. They're pushing it. They're pushing it
That's
hard.
the thing is, we do have a system though. That that's the hard part. Is like, to me, I think a lot of what would help. I don't think it's a perfect solution. I think a lot of what would help was if folks got much more involved in their state and local politics. Because that's the ground level of what impacts your day to day. If everyone actually matters, or if everyone actually cares about and holds their state and local officials accountable, those are the kind of people that are eventually going to get to the federal level, right? It's going to take time to change that, but those are the folks that get to the federal level. So if they're used to being held accountable because people are actually voicing it, and people are voting, and people are talking about it, not just the few people that do at the state and local level, because most people don't give a shit and will not vote for the state and local. They just vote at the presidential elections. If you take the time to hold those people accountable, they're eventually going to get to those federal positions. And if you hold them accountable too, they're more inclined to pay attention. That's, to me, that's one of the best, that's how our system is set up, is that we can get involved with those kind of things. And it's hard to do because most people just don't care, right? They don't see the value of state and local, right? They only want to see, they only want to be participating in the presidential because that's what gets politicized across the media. That's what's on the news. So they're like, I'm going to care about that, and that's it. Federal shit almost never impacts you, ever. Almost never on your day to day. They deal with big shit. They don't fucking hit up on the ground. So I think that's part of it. That's a long term thing. But yeah, we have an opportunity to change the direction things are going. But it requires a lot more involvement, I think, and a lot more conversations like this, where we can have 2 different perspectives, but not shit on each other. Really dissect, really listen to each other, because there's points that you're bringing up that are super important, on both sides of the house, but we're just totally ignoring them and discounting them when we get too crazy with this shit. Yeah.
I lost a friend of mine. He got the vaccine, and he had a blood clot and died. And I'm the sole breadwinner. My wife has gotten the vaccine, and that's her choice, and I respect that. And she respects the fact that I don't want to get it. I feel as though there's a greater risk of it having an adverse effect with me than if me fighting the COVID.
Well, Vern, 4 people live in this house with me, or 3 people live in this house with me. Mm-hmm. Tiffany, Joe, and Isaiah are over here enough. They might as well live here. I'm the only one that got it.
Right. I don't think it's as spreadable.
Nobody was wearing masks in this house, not even me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's transmitting as bad as the media is making it out to be. I just don't believe it.
But it is transmitting, and half the problem is we don't know enough about it yet to say this is what'll stop it.
Yeah. but that's so. Here's the thing too on that lens is that a lot of there are. So again, there's large numbers that are dying from it. Now it's across a nation of over 30 million people. So you're not necessarily going to see that in your day to day from the ground perspective. But it's also new, and so they're constantly. At least the scientific community is constantly trying to react. Anytime they get new data, they're constantly trying to react and change. Like the last thing you would want for them is to stick to what they first thought. That's the wrong fucking answer. That's how more people die. So they are going to change what they're saying as they learn more things. That's part of the process. But I think that the thing is that it's just become too politicized. And that's been a vessel to divide us,
And here's the kicker, and this is what really proves to me that it's been politicized, and the people are only looking out for income. Cuomo and Murphy should both be thrown in jail for sending the sick COVID patients back to the nursing homes and causing the death of all those people. And the media says nothing about it.
Oh, they're saying it now.
They're saying it now, but it's sad that it's like they're only gonna say shit when it benefits their views.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. Like media used to be a little more objective.
Yeah.
These days it's a lot more. It's harder to find. There's some media outlets that are more objective, but it's really really hard to find that. And there's so much noise out there.
Yeah.
So that's the shitty thing is because you're right. Like that kind of shit shouldn't happen. But that's how they're working now. So it's hard to find like a source of media that doesn't just bullshit you with one way,
Especially when USS
It is,
Mercy.
but again, it's a serious issue. It is a serious issue, and it's just sad to see that because it's politicized, we're putting ourselves like some people are going to extremes on both sides that are putting people at risk no matter what they do,
Right.
And that's just that blows my mind is that the level of division that's what's hurting us the most.
Yeah, I had a guy at work give me a hard time. I had a guy at work give me a hard time because I walked into the store with a mask on.
Wear the mask. Don't wear the mask.
That's fucking
I don't
wild,
care.
man.
You know
I
what
really
mean?
don't care anymore.
So I want to jump on that. Like that, I don't understand that perspective either. It's like, because the folks that are giving you shit for wearing a mask are folks that are hardcore. Like, I will never get the vaccine, which is like respect. Don't get the
Right.
vaccine because it's your choice. Why am I now getting shit for wearing a mask? That's also my fucking. Like where the fuck?
Yeah.
Dude, it's just like that's what I'm saying. The politicization of this shit has just caused shit to go so insane. Like it's so hypocritical on both sides. It makes no fucking sense.
I know, it's crazy, dude.
It
really
blows
is.
my mind, dude.
It's absolutely crazy.
And you think they're
And I'm
skewing
sorry-
the numbers
I'm sorry, Vern, that
intentionally,
you gotta
though?
go.
Yeah,
No,
it's-
I don't think the thing is certain. You gotta look at the sources of that information too. Like that's a hard thing. I wish more source cares.
Well, I know my
classes come in.
daughter thought she had COVID, and she did the home test, and it came up clean. But she was still congested and everything. She goes to urgent care, and they did the same kind of home test, and it came up negative. And the doctor said, well, I'm going to give you a prescription for COVID, not for your congestion, and we'll do the better test. It takes 2 days to get back. And they gave her a COVID diagnosis now. So that's in the record. And she's taking drugs for COVID. And that test came back negative too.
So that's the sad thing too, is that you gotta think these hospitals are gonna follow some of their own policies and regulations. I would look more at what the CDC is putting out, because the CDC is not following state and county regulations in the way these hospitals are doing certain things.
Yeah, but they're
putting out
getting their
guidelines
numbers from places that are doing that.
Right.
See, that's part of the problem. I
and
think the numbers are higher than they need to be, or they should be.
Because they're getting money for it.
I think there's.
You know, I saw an army vet.
There's definitely some skewing, yeah, because there is that incentive. But in terms of, I would ignore the ones that like how many people have it. I would focus more on how many people are actually dying. That's a more important statistic. You know, the ones that have it, I don't think is as important because you're absolutely right. They're gonna be these hospitals are gonna be looking for funding. These are essentially private entities that are looking to get funded.
The problem. No, we had a girl on here who was a medic. They flew her out to California. There's so crazy going on out there. She said there was nobody in the hospital and they were fighting over the drug addicts that were overdosing coming in because they were so bored.
Alex.
Yeah. One.
I remember
Two,
that.
I saw another video of an Army vet who was told they will not resuscitate somebody that had COVID. And this is what the doctor told her. She point blank told the doctor, I don't care what you have to say. It's my license. I'm going to resuscitate them. So they're letting people die if they're not following, you know what I mean? If they don't have decent integrity like that girl did. So to me, that's totally way out of the box and wrong. Right?
Yeah, if that's happening, like that's 100% fucked up. You know? That needs to be addressed, and it's being masked by a lot of other shit. You know?
Right.
But that's
It's
what I'm
just
saying. Like
out of control.
the thing is like like I would look more at scientific studies, like those kind of reports, those kind of statistics, the kind of information they're doing from those kind of things. When you're looking at a scholarly article, like that's a little bit better of a source because they know that if they get proven wrong and if there's any kind of thing that shits on their credibility, the other institutions in that scholarly community are going to shit all over them, and it completely discredits them. You know, so they have to. Their life and death is based on how accurately they can make these reports and these studies with the stuff they had at the time of the study and the report.
Now, if my employer came to me, if my employer
it's just
came
hard.
to me,
I mean, I get what you're saying. Is there's a lot of data out there that's just being skewed. It's being fucked up and it's being driven. I mean, kind of back to the point where we were talking about earlier with, you know, the helicopter that had to engage those targets. People are going to take small snippets of shit and use it to their advantage. And
Right.
I think you're right. I think that's happening big time.
and you know, it kills me because it's like if my employer came to me and said, "Look, I want you to get the vaccine. If you want to stay working, you got to get the vaccine." I'd point blank turn around and say, "Fine, I'll get the vaccine if you sign a document saying that you're going to pay my wages if something happens to me and I die to where I can't work and fulfill my pension up until I'm 62 years old. Union wages, 50, 60 hours a week is what I'm usually working. Fine, I'll get the shot." You know what you're going to do? You're going to look at me and laugh.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Because they don't care. You know, they're not the one that has to take care of my wife.
No, it's. I don't know. It's a shit show. There's so much misinformation going around both sides. That's you know. It's,
The only thing you could
like,
do.
I get why the government, in terms of like you look at federal and things like that, they're trying to enforce it, or they are now enforcing it. Because if they're taking it as an issue and they want to drive that, that's an easy thing they can do. They can totally be like, you know what, you like, this is what we do. Like, you play by our rules. Like, if you're going to work here, like, cool. You know,
Well,
for private companies to have to do the same thing, that's more of a stretch because that's That's
Well,
not how
you
the
know,
system's supposed to work.
if the government is requiring government workers to get the vaccine, why is the postal service exempt? Because then they can't get their mail-in ballots.
I don't know that one.
Because they can't get their mail-in ballots then. It's because all the people will quit. Just don't want to get the shot. Then you can't rig the election.
I'll have to look at that one. I don't really know much about that one.
There's some shady stuff going on, dude, big time. And people
Yeah,
are in the
put that
dark
in.
over it.
I'm gonna look into that one later. You said the postal service?
Yeah, U.S. Postal Service. Now, I will say this firsthand. I did not check that. That was something that was told to me by somebody that I trust. So that's not my firsthand eyes on to make sure it's true.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, we'll leave that one aside. We'll dig into that one. But that's like shit. If that's true, like that's fucking hypocritical as shit, man.
Makes sense though, if you think about it from that standpoint,
Yeah, it's the government. They do what they want.
Yeah.
right?
Also, yes, this massive hypocritical entity.
They had I saw a couple pictures of Pelosi and all her crew standing around talking with no mask, and when they realized there was a photographer there, they all put masks back on.
Right. Follow the money, bro. People say it's free. It's not free. Follow the money.
Yeah, well,
But that technology that they use for that vaccine has so much potential that it's beyond belief. They literally may be able to come up with a shot that'll vaccinate you against every form of flu out there, from COVID down to, I got a runny nose and a stuffy, a little bit of congestion.
are you being sarcastic or for real?
No, I'm being for real. They're doing stuff now that they've been working on for years and years and years that we're just now seeing, and that the methodology behind the COVID vaccine is one of those things where it's almost entirely synthetic. Where I laugh,
They're not doing the live virus.
yeah, where I'm laughing is people that are like absolutely against the vaccine because it's not natural, but they'll go get an infusion of synthetic antibodies.
Yeah, that's some.
I'm like-
that's not everyone though. That's just like some people. That's going back to the extremes, right? The amount of
it's like,
misinformation and division is like riding some folks to just go to areas that don't make sense, because I mean, that's 100% hypocritical.
The infusion of the antibodies is pretty much just getting like the shot on steroids, right?
no, because the shot
It's not
forces
pushing a
your body
non-live
to
virus.
develop its own antibodies.
Right.
The infusion is they're taking blood from somebody that has the antibodies in their system, and they're basically giving you a transfusion with their blood.
That seems a little more dangerous.
Yes.
What if your body rejects their blood?
But the reactions, the way people are taking this shit it's crazy. It's like, listen, it should be, to me, it should be as simple as like, either you're willing to get the vaccine because you feel like your immune system's cool and you don't have to worry about it as much, and you can take a hit if you do have one of those reactions to it, or if you're more concerned and that's not something you want to do, like just take a safer approach when you're in public. Like, it should be as simple as that, because either way you should be taking that safer approach in public anyway. during a pandemic, right?
All right.
Have-
It's
have-
like, why the fuck? Why have we gotten to the point where it's just like we're just riding each other to the fucking ground?
Oh, and the stuff they say. Let's see. What was my favorite? Oh yeah. Well, if you're in the military, they can force you to get vaccinated. What's the difference if you're not in the military? Well, if I'm in the military, I signed a contract that says you can do what you want with me. And
Right.
as a civilian, I didn't sign that. So that's the
Uncle
difference.
Sam don't owe me anymore. Uncle Sam could kiss my ass.
Not right now because COVID's pretty rampant. They really don't know how it spreads. So
Well, mouth to mouth.
I might start a rumor that you get it from touching the keys on the election machine.
Yeah, I'm a free man now.
You're getting it through the mail because if the mailman has it and he doesn't have to be vaccinated, it'll be
Right.
on the envelope when you get your mail.
Yeah, so you can't
No,
mail
we
him back.
gotta no, guys. We gotta spread it so that people think you get it when you go to the bar and drink a draft beer. Oh, that would be so. I mean, that would suck for the restaurant business, but like, goddamn, it'd be so nice to get a bar without having to deal with like a bunch of drunk assholes. So awesome.
That's cold.
Funny though.
That's cold. That's all right. We went to the Dominican Republic. I literally got enough rum to last a year and a half to 2 years. 2 bottles.
That's all it takes.
What you call
We
medicine?
just, we just don't drink a lot. So 2 bottles will last us about a year and a half to 2 years.
All right, guys. I need to definitely get to bed now. I gotta wake up in a few hours.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys. Good talking with you. I'll see you guys again.
It was good.
Yeah,
Stay
good
safe.
talking, Neil.
Yep, you too.
Night, guys.
All right, late.